Donald Trump put
Okay, so good evening. We're going to call our meeting to order. We have Select Board Member Paris Bayani, who sits in that seat, on the phone. Bill is here, and I expect Mike and Anthea to join us because I've not heard that they're not, but we will, in the interest of time, go ahead and get started. And Bill usually kind of has some opening comments. You know, I think we'll start with generally like who you are and experience in Massachusetts, and then we'll dive into some other things. We have your presentation. Everybody in the board has seen your response. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Bill if you want to do some, we just introduced ourselves. Do you want to just take it away on the firm or however you'd like to start?
Yeah. First off, I'll ask you, what did you guys do to prepare for tonight?
We met, and we also, I had my paralegal do sort of what we do for preparation. We pulled your charter, we pulled your bylaws, we looked at your most recent annual reports, and we looked at whether there were any court cases filed for the town. Okay. So just to get a sense of how you operate, who you are, what you do, understand the sort of the basic underpinnings of your governance structure.
Great. Yeah. I don't mean this to be like a deposition or anything,
no, it's fine.
but it's good to see what the lawyers do for their homework.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as I did say, if you happen to watch our meeting from last week, we haven't really scripted this at all because, in my opinion, the way a good counsel works is you get all sorts of nonsense from all sorts of directions, and part of it is to see how you handle that. So
sure. I spent about 15, just for the record,
yeah. I
spent about 15 minutes sort of skimming through the Harrington Heap interview from last week. But my takeaway was it wasn't scripted like so many are.
Yeah.
Which is, and I was curious who they were bringing. So, because obviously, you know, we all see each other at a lot of these things. So,
yes.
I was curious to know who the team is.
It is a small bar. So
it is a small bar.
And one thing I like about Boston. So, with that, I would like you guys to kind of start by giving us an overview as to, you know, who you are, what you're going to bring. And in comes right now, this is Mike Betancourt. He's another one of our select board members.
Nice to see you again.
So yeah, just an overview of who you are, what you bring, you know, what is the value add that we're going to get with Murphy Hess and your team.
Yep, sure. So I'll start. I'll introduce myself and give you the overview as really the team leader, and then I'll have Jamie and Eddie introduce themselves to you and add their thoughts as well. So I'm Karis North. I'm a partner at the firm. I have been with the firm since 2006. My background is in environmental law, regulatory law, government. I worked for the federal government, the state government, and now I excuse me, advise local governments. I'm pretty much a government policy wonk. The way our team is structured is, and we've been doing this with our most recent interviews, is that I'm the overall lead in charge, and Etty is my backup on town council matters. We then have my partner, Peter Mello, who unfortunately got called into an emergency temporary restraining order preliminary injunction hearing way down on the South Shore this afternoon that didn't finish until after 4, and he didn't want to come walking in late, so he is not here with us, but that Jamie is Peter's backup. So we divide the work if litigation arising out of municipal matters, so planning board, zoning board, anything, procurement comes, it'll come to me and then it'll go to Peter to be managed, and he loves the litigation, and I really, my role is as your general counsel. Right, I do the soup to nuts, the governance, the public records, the open meeting law, town meeting, land use, and obviously with support and assistance from the members of the firm, with Eddie being the key backup, and then our colleague Kate Connolly, who does a lot of land use and environmental, will also probably be involved in doing some of that work. She's relatively new. She's only been with us since May. So we're still rolling her out and finding places for her to do work. So that's how it works. I'm the face and the person. If you all have any issues, I'm the gatekeeper too, with either the town administrator or the chair of the select board, however you like to work it. We try to gatekeep to make sure that the issues that are coming to town council are appropriate, so that you know and have confidence that, first of all, you're not having 20 different people call, and secondly, you know that the issues have been validated as being issues that are important for the town, and that you want and need a legal analysis of those issues. So everything will come through me. You'll get an initial response, and then you'll get questions about timing. When do you need this? Who do I need to talk to in the community? And then I'll keep it myself, or it'll be assigned to Eddie at first blush, or perhaps somebody else, depending on the issue and expertise. But they'll always come back through me, and so that I have a sense of what's going on, so that Michelle, you, as chair of the select board, you could call and say, I got a call from the press today about this matter. Can you tell me what's going on? And if I don't have the answer at my fingertips, I know exactly where to go to get an answer for you without taking time or having to dig around or thrash around or be inefficient. So that's how we work. And I'm happy to have Jamie and Eddie tell you a little bit about themselves and the work they do as part of our team.
Hi everyone, I'm Jamie Donnelly. I've been practicing with Murphy Hesse I'm in my 3rd year of practice, and I've been working with them in some capacity for around 5 years now. Over that time, I've been exposed to basically the gambit of municipal practice, which includes, board governance and all that stuff. Today, I'm here as proposed backup counsel with Peter Mello for litigation, and I work closely with Peter on, we have a ton of cases together right now. From the municipal perspective, we work together on appellate tax board cases, dangerous dog hearings, license to carry cases, really just covering the gambit of whatever might come through the town. And that's really what draws me to municipal practice is the litigation and the thrill that I get from it. And that's what I love about practicing in this area. So I'm excited to be here today as a backup litigation counsel.
This is Anthea Brady.
Hey, good morning. Good afternoon. Morning.
So you've only missed kind of introductions and overview so far.
Excellent.
So I'm Etty Singer, and I'm the newest of the associates. I've been with Murphy Hesse for 2 years now, and I've been working primarily in the municipal area. I've been supporting Karis a lot. I don't have a lot to add to what she said. I've assisted with a lot of the items she mentioned, topics she mentioned. Yeah, I'm just happy to be here.
Yeah, Eddie's learning the full range and breadth of municipal law. I have given her things from, we got year-old bills from National Grid, do we have to pay them, to here's a question about the anti-aid amendment, to land use questions, to the whole panoply of issues. And not only has she been a lawyer with us for 2 years, she also was a law clerk with us and a summer associate. So she's been around for a while as well, and works not just with me, but with a lot of our attorneys on a variety of issues for many communities.
All right. The first question that I'm asking everybody, it's pretty simple, but it's broad. What do you see the role of town council to be in terms of working with, a municipality? So not just the select board, but all the other boards and committees that you'd necessarily be needed to support.
So we're the municipal council for the corporate entity, right? I don't just represent the select board or town meeting or the chair of the planning board. And as I said earlier, it's a general counsel role. So we are your advisors. We are here to help you do what you need to do to run the town in the way that you all, as the policymakers, decide is the best way to do it. We are not policymakers. We are not decision makers. That's in the hands of the select board or the planning board or town meeting or whichever municipal entity is the appropriate decision maker. We want to help you to the extent we can help you, or tell you where you've gone too far, brainstorm ideas, to be part of your team, but in an advisory capacity, not in a decision-making capacity. And we work very hard at Murphy Hesse to build relationships so that we understand you and your community, so that we can help give you the best legal advice, but already understanding some of the constraints and some of the history. And we have communities that we've been working with for 40, 45, 35, 30 years. So we are pretty good at developing those relationships. And that's, I think, a hallmark of what we do and how we do it. We've been doing this for a long time. And even as we've changed council over 40 years, because of course we have, we've still kept those relationships because of not just institutional knowledge, but the ability to understand and learn and do good work for our communities and help them to be successful in what they want to do.
Approximately how many towns does Murphy Hesse provide town council, and specifically town council, not special town council,
Yep.
not city solicitor work, but the town council role? How many communities do you guys serve in that regard?
So we have town council, I wrap town council and city solicitor together because they're very similar.
Okay, that's fair.
So 11, I believe, right now. And so, and then obviously many others with special counsel, labor council, education council. And that's the other reason why I think communities like us, we have communities who hire us for labor council and education council and town council. So we really understand what's going on, and it's very easy to walk down the hall or, and talk to my colleague who's the education council, because there are questions that come about that have some intersection between school and education, with joint facilities departments, or with joint IT departments, or with procurement in particular, or with land use sometimes. And so it makes it easier and simpler. And we all, I don't want to say that we dabble in education law. I would say that we probably do more, the municipal lawyers probably do more on the labor and employment side than we do on the education side, but we have our colleagues with that expertise that we can turn to.
Okay. Well, with that, I know you're personally town council to Natick, Mendon, and Sharon. Is that correct?
Correct.
Any others?
The city of Newburyport.
Okay. Is there any similarity in what you have seen or what you've been able to look up in your limited preparation, of course, where you can see the way some of those other towns might be addressing issues that you could bring specifically here to Winchester?
Yeah, well, obviously every community has its own things that make it distinctive, and its own ways of doing business.
Yeah, and before we get too far,
yeah,
and sorry to interrupt, but this is
okay.
Paras Bayani. He's our 5th and final board member, so we're now fully assembled here in person.
Welcome. Nice to meet you. One of the things I noticed when I was looking at your charter is that it seems to be based on sort of the same model of charter that probably went around in the 80s, and that Natick has some very similar charter provisions and structures, although there are some things that are different between the two. But I thought that was sort of interesting in that. And we just went through a charter and bylaw review process in Natick, and so maybe there's some things that I have learned from doing analysis of the Natick charter that might be helpful for Winchester. Obviously, there are state level issues that are going to affect communities of similar size and perhaps similar tax base, like affordable housing and the MBTA communities, and just sort of density and development, and how you develop in a fairly dense area, but to maintain the character of the community. That I think, again, there's probably some Natick and maybe even some Sharon similarities there. Mendon, I don't think in terms of similarities, it's a much simpler process. They just started a professional town administrator in the last 5 years, and have very simple bylaws, so not as complicated and as sort of forward thinking, but they're learning and they're sort of becoming that way. Yes, there are things to be said and there are lessons to be learned, and I think these two can tell you that one of the things I'll say to them when I ask them to work on an issue is, oh, I think we looked at something similar in Drake 2 years ago. Go check in our document management system under this attorney for that issue before you even go spend time doing research, and look for a sample of what you're looking for. So there are always things that you do over and over again, but with refinements based on how the law has changed over the past years or the needs of the particular community.
You mentioned development a couple times there. What is your own personal experience specifically with 40B developments?
I do a lot of 40B work. I've been special counsel to some communities for 40B work, and I have also been sort of the 40B expert in the firm. Eddie has worked with me on a variety of those projects, so I'm training her in 40B as well, and she's covered meetings for me and helped me with decisions and preparing, and actually Peter Mello also does some 40B work as well. So I think we're very strong in the 40B field, with lots of experience from the permitting process to the litigation at the end of the day. We've done it all.
Sure. We'd obviously like to avoid litigation.
Absolutely.
Says the litigator. And we do have a number of 40B projects that are they're at various stages in their development around town here. What would you say to be the real key efforts that town council can bring to ensuring 40Bs are successful, that they remain friendly, and that the town is properly protected?
So I think educating the zoning board members, educating the populace, and setting expectations is really important, because if you don't, you have a lot of people saying crazy things about 40Bs regularly. And that sometimes those inaccurate statements take a life of their own, and so you need to be able to sort of be able to say clearly, right now you are, below the 10% or below the 1.5%, and so it's going to be more difficult for your community to, flat out stop this 40B. So what we can work on is conditions that are appropriate for the community to try to make this successful. And I think you also have to be prepared to have negotiations and discussions with the applicant, and get the board up to speed on doing that, and the board comfortable with their counsel talking to council about what it is you really need and what the community needs to be successful and to make this project successful moving forward.
Can you give an example of any particularly difficult situations you had with getting a 40B across the finish line in a good manner?
Yeah, I had a project in a community where I'm special counsel, and it had been, the project and the hearings had been opened and gone on for a year, and they hadn't really gotten anywhere, and the community had hired a special counsel who just didn't do a lot. And so they were sort of way behind the 8 ball, and they needed someone to step in quickly and help them move this project forward before the developer got tired of giving extensions, and the 180 days had long run. So they hired me. I came in, I met with everybody, I got informed, and I worked with the developer. And then, of course, the pandemic hit in the process. So everything that we were trying to do quickly got slowed down. But the counsel for the developer and I developed a really good working relationship that then went and included his client and my client, so that we could all sit at a table and say, this is what we want to accomplish. How can we best get there and problem solve and be very active in trying to get to success, to sound like a cliche, but to get to a project that everybody could live with. And there were, a variety of issues that made that more challenging, but we did at the end of the day, and it is slowly being built, but it is being built, and moving forward. So.
Going back specifically to your work at Natick, just because that seems to be the town on your list that is closest maybe in size to Winchester. Can you give us an estimate as just to first off, are they on an hourly fee schedule as well, or do you have a retainer or flat fee agreement
So
with them?
because they are one of our oldest clients, we've been counsel with them for almost 45 years. They have a mixed retainer, so they have a very large retainer that covers sort of the day-to-day counsel things, and then labor and litigation are all at an hourly rate.
Okay. Can I ask what the retainer is?
Well, the bills are public. The retainer is right now $115,000.
And do you keep within that budget every year?
Well, the budget is obviously bigger than that
Sure.
because it includes the other
litigation,
things,
employment.
the litigation and the other things. And we've never had an issue where they've said to me, you got to stop spending. I'm concerned about the budget. I will say that sometimes during litigation, or you're in the middle of labor negotiations, or you're at the JLMC for two different unions, things that gets expensive quickly, and so you do have to adjust the budgets, but we've never had a situation where someone has said, stop, you're killing me, the budget is out of control. I've never had that issue in any of my work that I've done for any client, and I've never had anyone come back to me and say, I don't want to pay this bill. I think this is wrong, or you're double counting or something. I try to be really careful about my bills. When Jamie and Etty are working on things, they come talk to me. I don't typically bill for that. It depends. If I'm adding substance, I do. If they have some sort of more procedural questions, I don't bill for that. That's training them and also, letting your project move forward.
Okay. I think in your proposal, you were suggesting that we have an hourly fee, at least to start.
Correct.
We are a community full of some very fervent volunteers, boards and committees that really take it upon themselves to do a lot, and who appreciate good counsel, and who might want it more than necessary sometimes. How are you going to make sure that we don't accidentally bill ourselves into oblivion with requests coming in from all different directions? And kind of as a corollary to that, how are you going to make sure that when you do give counsel, it is uniformly received and understood by all the necessary stakeholders?
So the first part, I think I said a little bit in my introduction about the gatekeeping, right? I think gatekeeping is really important to make sure you get the work done that needs to get done. And that does require some effort on your side of the gate as well. But I also, got a random call the other day from a town employee, and I reached out. I wasn't sure that the town really wanted me to take that call and go down the rabbit hole that I could foresee coming. And so I just made a quick call and checked in. And so it's got to be that two-way communication. And that's part of developing the relationship, knowing who to talk to and when, and knowing enough about what's going on that you can see a rabbit hole, or maybe, you see something that, you just need to you don't know, and so you just need to not be afraid to say, I don't know where this is or anything about this. Get me up to speed, and is this something you want us to be working on? So I think that's part of it. The second half of your question, I'm sorry, can you give me the second half of the question again?
Sure. How would you ensure that when you do give advice, it's uniformly understood by not necessarily just everybody at this table, but if town meeting needs to understand it, or if the zoning board needs to understand it?
Sure. We deliver, all three of us, our advice the same way, which is in the most efficient and clear way that we possibly can. And if Etty has written something or Jamie has written something and I think it needs to be clearer, I'll either give them some suggestions on how to make it clearer, or I will modify it before it goes out to the client. I think it's really important to use plain language. I don't like getting caught up in legalese. I am not formal in that sense. I want my clients to understand, and I want them also to be able to say, I don't understand this, please tell me what you're trying to say, and not be afraid of asking those questions back and forth, so to be approachable. You know, we all try to be incredibly well prepared. Eddie's covering a hearing in housing court for me tomorrow, and we were just talking this afternoon about how we both like to over-prepare, but, you know, sometimes you don't have that ability to be as prepared as you want. She was waiting for something from the client. And so we really, you know, try to anticipate issues if that's possible. Town meeting in particular. So for Natick Town Meeting, I've been their counsel for 6 years, but they put together a very detailed book for town meeting that includes all of the Finance Committee recommendations and a summary of the discussions of the Finance Committee. And I've already been involved with the Select Board and the Planning Board, so I kind of know what the hot button issues are for each of the articles. I may have written legal opinions. Someone's going to ask me about that legal opinion at some point on town meeting floor. I have all of that with me or accessible, and I'm available. I, you know, have in front of me my computer with all my things that if I need to look something up, I can. But I try to be prepared and to anticipate, and that's how I've taught these guys to work forward as well, so that if you understand it, you have a better chance of explaining it in a way that someone can understand and be clear.
So can I ask a follow-up kind of to that question? So
Of course.
it sounds like maybe one thing too is we're a twice a year town meeting, so that's a question sometimes around, you know, lead counsel and backup counsel being available for 3-ish nights in November to 4-ish nights in May. We will start November 3rd here and run until our business is done. My question is sort of related to an earlier comment that you made around, I heard a lot about educational law and labor law. Are there any areas of law, in 40B, we went down that path, any areas of law that you find yourselves needing to outsource beyond a conflict of interest, right? But just areas where you look to find expertise, you know, in land use, environmental, is there any of those that you find yourself sometimes bringing in?
Honestly, no. Sometimes the client may have someone that they like to work with on a particular narrow issue that they bring in, and that's fine. That's the client's choice. But no, I can't think of a situation where I've said, I think that you should outsource this to special counsel. We don't have the capability to handle it. We have, you know, obviously more than just the 3 of us in our firm. We have about 30 lawyers, and we have a lot of expertise, and we have the document management system, and we know that we certainly haven't dealt with every issue in municipal law, but somebody may have looked at something analogous or a piece of it, and we talk. We have a municipal group that meets every month. We share information, so we haven't had that situation yet. We do tax title work. We do license to carry work. Jamie's working on one right now. We do some of the more obscure stuff, the appellate tax board as well. And you know, if we know the client and we know the issue, then we'll usually, you know, be able to grasp the legal concepts. Just about town meetings, Natick is a twice a year by charter and 2 annual town meetings, and they go Tuesday, Thursday, Tuesday, Thursday. And they're such that both town meetings are 4 to 6 nights, sometimes 8. They've been 10, so I've spent a lot of time in town meeting.
Sometimes 10?
I had,
How
yeah,
often 10?
Twice.
What could you do?
Twice.
What could you do to avoid that from happening to us?
Well, that's what we've
Start with
gotten it
6.
down from that to 4 to 5, occasionally 6. It doesn't need to go that long. They have an active, large town meeting. You're larger than they are, actually. You have fewer precincts, but more people. Sometimes it's like it's Thursday night entertainment, honestly. I think people, they don't start on time and they end earlier than I would like them to end. And I think every single year we could get another, you know, we could cut a day off if people would be there at 7:30, or they'd be willing to start at 7 and they'd stay until 10:30 instead of 10:10 or 10 o'clock, right?
Okay.
So scheduling they're the only ones, and it's their culture. It's really a culture, and we've worked really hard to pull it back. So don't worry, it's not. Believe me, it's not me.
I don't think it's ever a town council if a meeting goes long. Truly. I don't know if others, Mike.
Yeah,
Ours, if you
I'll
guys
jump
wanna
in. A question for Jamie and Eddie. What do you see, and there's no wrong answer here, what have you seen lately as kind of a newer issue or something that's coming up in the municipalities that you're working with that you kind of haven't seen before, or that you feel like we're going to be seeing in the near future, whether it be housing related or employment related or anything like that? Dog hearing related, whatever it may be.
I can speak to that,
Yeah.
at least initially. I'm working right now for one of our communities where we're on a special counsel basis. We're in the appeals court right now, and it's on a public records issues that are being addressed for the first time in litigation. So we're in the appeals court right now, kind of at the forefront of public records law. That's not necessarily the sexy pick, I don't think.
What's the particular issue? I assume it's public if you're in court.
Yeah. So the issue there is, in this community, they have kind of a serial public records requester.
Yep.
Who over the last few years has hundreds, maybe thousands of public records requests have come in. And so that community is bringing a lawsuit to try to get those public records requests labeled as harassment, and have the supervisor of public records relieve the community of its burden to respond to those requests. The precise issue that's right now in the appeals court is about anti-SLAPP law, which protects the rights of individuals to speak out against the threat of litigation, right? So right now we're litigating whether a community bringing a lawsuit to challenge a decision from the supervisor of records violates the anti-SLAPP law.
Oh, okay.
So that's kind of at the forefront of public records law. There's other, emerging issues, mostly related to housing, I think, and others in our firm, especially Peter Mello, who's proposed as lead counsel, have been at the forefront of that. So.
Perfect. Thank you. Eddie, I don't know if you had anything to add to that. Or...
I can
Sorry
add.
to put you on the spot, but...
No, it's okay. I had a minute to think.
Yes.
I don't know if it's specifically related to like town council work. Karis, you'll jump in. So, and it's a little bit political. So I've been reviewing federal contracts for different agencies that are specifically housing agencies that provide like shelters, and working with the federal guidance, state guidance, and advising them on how to, if they need to make any changes, and if they don't, what the risks are. So I've done a couple of those deep dives, HUD contracts specifically.
Yep.
And I've also written Klein law about immigration and schools, specifically for the school council. They asked me to write something about ICE coming to schools. So I've done a little bit more, some of the political work, especially with the turn, since the new election, there's been a lot of panic, and we've been just trying to keep things, people calm, and working a lot, of course, reviewing a lot of the Attorney General guidance. So that's what I'm thinking of, emerging issues, not specifically town council,
Yeah,
but
right.
definitely emerging.
No, it
hot
does have
button.
an impact at the local level. So
It definitely does.
And she's advised a local airport commission on the same issue. It's anything with a federal contract that requires you to affirm that you're complying with executive orders. And so Eddie's been our lead on that and has done tremendous work of wading through stuff that I'm really thankful I don't have to look at, and written some really, really useful advice for our clients.
Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, with the anti-SLAPP public records requests, how was that resolved at the trial court?
In our favor.
Motion to dismiss, summary judgment, trial?
So the public records requester made a special motion to dismiss just solely based on anti-SLAPP law.
Gotcha.
Saying that the city bringing the lawsuit against him was infringing on his public speech rights.
Yep.
And that it should be dismissed. Those are, the trial court resolved it in our favor.
Who was the judge?
Judge Barry Smith, Christopher Barry Smith in Middlesex.
Yeah. He's in the BLS now.
Oh, okay. Good to know.
I had him up in Middlesex, or here in Middlesex.
Yeah, he was there for the first half of the year, and now he's down to BLS.
Yeah,
and I'm sure
he's great. And
you want to be on.
Wrote a great decision.
Yeah.
That's now before the appeals court.
He probably made it easier for you.
Yes.
So one thing that we've had some good success with, I mean, you're providing counsel not just to this table, not just to the boards and organizations and volunteers, but also to our staff. Mm-hmm. What sort of relationship do you like to have when it comes to the staff at the towns that you provide counsel for? And one thing in particular we've really enjoyed, I think, is having open office hours where people can just drop in and.
We have office hours, and we
in person.
In person, if we can. I've sometimes had to make them virtual just because of circumstances, but once a month typically with my communities. I am in the community, and I'll be there, say, for a 4-hour chunk in the afternoon, or until the select board meeting starts that night, or whatever. The assistant will let all of the department heads. It's usually department head level. And, we want to learn who your department heads are. We want to have them comfortable with talking to us, because they're the ones who are going to flag the issues that we can try to work on, so that we don't have to have litigation, that we can try to resolve before it becomes a problem. They're wanting to do A, B, and C, and they need to do X, Y, and Z. We want to be able to have that conversation with them. And to make that effective, they need to get to know us, and we need to get to know them. So it is a hallmark of what we've been doing. David DeLuca, who represents Norwood and Danvers, is our biggest proponent of office hours, and he's been, going up to Danvers and to Drakeid and wherever. I go to Newburyport and Natick, and Sharon is new. I'm trying to get them to like the idea. If I don't do office hours, I do like a weekly or bi-weekly call with the town administrator and any senior staff they want to bring, just as a check-in on current priorities and things like that, so that we stay on top of what your needs are if something changes, or it's an opportunity where an issue comes up with the police chief and the fire chief, and a procurement issue, and the town administrator knows he's got Thursdays at 3:30. He'll have them join the call, and sort of we'll forego our checklist, and we'll take the time to address that issue. So, in person on a regular basis, and then at the town administrator or town manager level or senior staff level, usually every week or every other week on phone or Zoom, just to make sure we're staying on top of everything.
Sorry, Andy, have you asked her a question?
No, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Just to piggyback on the idea of other boards and committees often having questions for council. One question we get, I think, a lot, and we sometimes get caught up on is OML. In particular with bodies that are creating subcommittees or bodies that are themselves comprised of constituent parts of other bodies, which is very common here, maybe common everywhere. So just be interested in what you see as the most common issues that towns have had with OML. Obviously we all know not to have a quorum of the board go and have a private conversation. That's simple. But some of the more areas that may not be obvious but trip people up, and how you've been able to counsel towns on that, particularly a town like this that has so many volunteers.
Sure. I think that the subcommittee issue is always a big question. And if it's a subcommittee or if it's a body that's advising the town manager or the superintendent, the rules are different, right? And so you want to make sure that your subcommittees understand what their charge is, who they're advising, and that if they're a public body, that they have to go through, notice and agendas and minutes and things like that. So that's an issue. I think sometimes the content of what's in your minutes is always an issue. And some communities like to be absolutely brief, and some communities like to have a stenographic transcript, right? And it goes both ways, and you don't need the transcript. It's and these days now you have digital recordings to see. They're not obviously the public record, but you can go back, so you definitely don't need a full transcript. You need to make sure you get the key information, and I think that the Attorney General lately has been getting stricter and stricter about minutes and making them even more specific. So you're going towards, they're swinging back towards more detail as opposed to less. I've seen that with a couple of my communities. The other thing is whether you were appropriately in executive session. And so, unless you know that it's an appropriate subject for an executive session, send me an email. It takes 2 minutes to review and say, yes, this is appropriate, no, this isn't, or I need more information to answer the question, is there a case, and then how do you actually post for that executive session? And then I think the last one is probably whether something is a personnel matter under exemption 1 or not, depending
in executive session.
In executive session, yes, depending on what that's typically a select board question, as opposed to other boards. But those are really the issues. We obviously do training. I've done a lot of training. Eddie's been with me to see some of it. I've trained for the MMA. I trained all of the new select board members through the MMA select board training up in Devon's in June this summer. I trained for the Association of Finance Committees. I've trained on webinars for the MMA, and then I do them for our clients. I have in the box training that I can then tailor for any community and enjoy doing it and having those conversations. And these guys have all seen it and could do it themselves.
A follow-up there, yeah. So on the I'll take them in reverse order. Minutes is clear. On executive session, is that personnel piece the most common one, or are there other areas that people are sort of arguing about or debating that it was appropriate or inappropriate that you've seen?
Litigation, and lots of people just like to stick anything under litigation if they can, because it is fairly broad, and the concept of pending litigation can be covered, but it needs to have a time component. So you just have to make sure you ask the right questions about what the matter is or what the concern is, and then do you post a description of the matter or not? If you're with the select board and they're considering litigation, no, don't post the matter right away. But there are, other, I think, questions about making sure the case caption is appropriately used. I just looked at somebody's agenda, I can't remember, and it's just not sufficient in terms of the description and how they've listed it. And so I need to go back to that client and say, hey, I was looking at your agenda to sign into your meeting and I noticed X, Y, and Z.
Right.
And I have been the heavy and said, this one is so bad.
You want some free legal advice there. Before you render us free legal advice already.
I saw a grimace there. So.
Just to follow up on the subcommittee point, I know the AG says it's a very facts and circumstances dependent question. They've described it, I think, as labor intensive sometimes to figure out the answer. But how do you, just general principles, think about where it's a couple of people doing research versus something that looks more official? It'd just be interesting.
You want to take that one, because she's been doing a lot of open meeting law.
Oh, I need to, I don't want to quote anything in specific, but there is a 4-part test that I'm not going to be able to say without paper in front of me, but I have been, in Norwood, there were a couple of that I recently reviewed and was able to advise, given using the AG's 4-part test about subcommittees. There's the research, is who they're reporting to, who puts the group together. So there are some like standards that do decide subcommittee versus not, working group. Yeah, there's a working group is a different definition, all that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
My turn. So I'll say we, like every municipality, like to think we're unique and special, and one of the things we have is a lot of water, and one of the things we have are is a commuter rail line. So can you talk a bit about your experience working with the MBTA and with conservation commissions, and sort of looping back to the 40B buildings as well as it relates
Did you
to
say
conservation?
lack of water or lots of water?
Lots of water.
Lots of water. Okay.
Oh, lots of water.
Okay.
Wetlands. We have our own reservoir that.
Okay. All right.
The original name of Winchester was Waterfield.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start with the wetlands question first. I mean, my background is as an environmental lawyer, as is Kate Connolly, one of my colleagues, and so lots of experience working with conservation commissions and development projects, dealing with, I think what's happening is as land gets more expensive and there's less of it, people are trying to develop areas that may not be as suitable for development as they used to be, or it would be too expensive, 10 years ago to develop that area, and now because of the increased potential profit, they are sort of pushing the envelope. So I was land use council in Cohasset for a while, and there's marshes and ledge and the ocean and dunes and all of those things that you had to figure out, and land that's very desirable. So, I think we have a lot of experience in looking at those issues and trying to figure out solutions as best we can, and understanding the regulations well, and also having good relationship with the folks at DEP, and being involved in the project, and having the Conservation Commission and the conservation agent ask you and tell you what's going on so that you can be involved and give advice sooner rather than later. If you're talking about generally managing your own resources, that's obviously a different question. And that, I think, is really, there's legal questions there, but there's also inherently policy questions in that as well. With respect to the MBTA, do you mean working with the entity, or do you mean working with the MBTA communities law, or
Working with the entity itself.
working with the entity itself? So,
Sorry.
Yeah, no.
My colleagues are grinning because that's a tough
I just
question.
wanted to be clear about what the question was. We can access and have experience working with all levels of city and state government, and understand how agency works, and know how to find the right person to get the right answer. It's not always easy, and you have to be persistent, and I think that's something that we're all pretty good at. I had a colleague once tell me that, trying to be nice, but calling me a pit bull, but in a much nicer way than that, because you have to be persistent to do that. And so I usually know their counsel, because I'm the former president of the Mass Municipal Lawyers Association, and I'm an active member of the association. We all share information, and if I don't know the MBTA counsel, I know somebody who does, and they'll get me in the door. And through that MMLA work, we've developed relationships with a lot of state agencies and the Attorney General's office and others. So we are pretty good about getting that information, and we represent registers of deeds. We have been special attorneys general for the Attorney General's office, and have represented some state agencies as well. So I think our firm generally does a good job of building those relationships, and so we know where to go and how to get them. And I haven't worked with anybody particularly at the MBTA, but I know I could get where I needed to go. That's not true. I've worked with the engineers in doing construction projects and dealing with all of the right-of-way issues and stuff like that. But I could get you where I needed to go.
And I'll just add to that we have represented communities that regularly deal with the MBTA, and I've been involved in situations where we're working directly with the MBTA, and in one where it ended in litigation. We do have that experience in the past.
And we did pass our 3A zoning a year ago? A
Year ago spring.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
gotten that piece.
year and a half ago.
A year and a half ago now.
Yeah, great.
Thankfully, not.
Yeah, wasn't an issue here. That's good.
Yeah, we instead, at Springtown meeting, passed the MBTA 3A Communities Act, and at the next fall town meeting, passed a rezoning of much of the same area, making it more attractive and incentivizing the sort of development that we wanted to see that wasn't what the Communities Act was pushing.
Okay.
More mixed use,
Yeah.
among other things. And so far, I think all of the applications have come in under our rezoning and not the MBTA zoning. But we're still increasing,
Yeah, but you're still providing the ability for the multifamily housing as a right, so.
yeah, without litigation or losing a bunch of state funding or
Perfect.
anything else.
That's where you want to be.
Yeah. Questions?
Someone should ask the Roberts Rules town meeting time.
We should not do that.
Robert's rules or town meeting time? That's the question.
Do I have a preference?
Yes,
Town meeting time.
thank you.
Which one do you use? Robert's rules, right?
But we're debating it right now. So it's Robert's rules, but it's on the warrant for the fall town meeting to debate.
Okay, yeah. Town meeting time is more tailored for Massachusetts town meetings. And now that we've got the revamp, which a lot of really good lawyers and, moderators spent a lot of time doing and working on and bringing it up to speed, I think makes it even better. I have a community that uses Roberts. It's fine. It still is a process, and that's what you need more than anything else. But I don't know. I like town meeting time. It's my own
Again, no wrong answer.
Yeah, thank you. No, I understand.
But you should have a chance to ask us some questions too. And one thing I'll say, in case if you weren't already curious, I think our hope is to make a decision before our November town meeting starts, so that there's an opportunity for new council to observe and see how that runs, and then kind of having more formal changeover at the beginning of December, so that there is some transition and overlap, and it's not just a sudden herky-jerky switch from one to another. But that said, is there anything in particular that you guys want to ask us to understand what sort of clients we might be, if you really want us?
Yes, we would like to have you. So just in terms of transition, one of the things that is I don't think is in my papers, but we just came on to Sharon last year after their singular town council retired after 30 years of work. And one of the things that worked really well was we provided 10 hours of transitional services at no cost. And I and my backup counsel went and had a meeting with the select board and the moderator and the chair of the finance committee to talk about big picture issues. And then we had 3 or 4 weeks later, I think I took over January 1, but we did some of this in December and then early January. We then had a meeting with all of the department heads scheduled. So I would hope that that's something like that you'd be willing to support doing that kind of meeting and get your department's heads here, and your town manager would work with us if we were chosen to be your new council, because I think it's really important and it helped me. And then we had a town meeting coming up, that we were getting ready for in March. It was the 1st of May, but it helped me get to know all the faces and, be ready to go to board meetings and talk about town meeting warrant articles and issues, and I had already seen all the things. I didn't just wait for people to come to me. So I thought that was really helpful and would want to use that same method going forward. Otherwise, I think I have a sense that you have not only a lot of volunteers, but a lot of volunteer boards. What are the issues that they have brought to you all that are sort of the more difficult, challenging issues that are taking your time or your other volunteer boards, you are all volunteers as well, time in Winchester right now.
You should mention state of the town, probably. Should mention state of the town.
Yeah, we are currently going through a State of the Town committee where we are, like many other towns, subject to a structural deficit and probably overdue for an override. No, we are overdue for an override, and likely to put that question before the voters in March. And so with that, we have brought together a committee that consists of the select board, also the school committee, finance committee, volunteers, a number of other stakeholders.
Capital
as well.
planning, planning board, right. So it's a good example of, like, it has 5 committees plus 7 people, people breaking up into different groups. So that's,
yeah, and each different working group has kind of broken out a different area of specialty, be it the operating expenses or the capital needs or places that maybe we can find increased revenue and income that we haven't really tapped into yet. And it has been very productive. I mean, we have got deep into the weeds of certain things, but it is also, constantly worrying about making sure we're abiding by OML. And, we have come up with a lot of creative ideas, some of which I think are wonderful and great and we're really running with, some that probably need more time, and some that maybe weren't too great. And we've, I think, had good discussions because of that, but we've grown past it too.
But these sort of cross-board initiatives where there's a lot of people, there's a lot of discussion, the group has to break into pieces, they have to report back, and then different pieces might go to different boards, different pieces may have to go to town meeting. This is a particularly large example, but there have been other recent examples too. It was sort of more clearly led by the planning board, but the 3A process would be an example of a lot of people out of view, and there've been real estate projects in town. Mike's driven some of them, and a lot of cooks in the kitchen, a lot of opinions. What goes to town meeting? What's the purview of the select board or the ZBA, or the select board or the select board or the ZBA or the planning board, depending on what part of town it's in. There's a lot of stuff to work through.
And setting aside the OML issues, have you involved council in any of these discussions? Have you had municipal finance issues or, structural governmental, governance issues that have come out of this that you've involved your council in, or do you foresee involving council in at some point?
Yes and yes.
Yeah, for sure. And then playing more of also an enablement. I mean, there's things as simple as the school committee is transferring a piece of property to us, and what's the right notice for that, and who signed it, and going to the historical commission, and what goes before town meeting, to OML. What do you say?
No.
But yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah, so we just passed the CPA in November, so the first cycle of funding is November, so we had town council involved in, standing that up, and also borrowing authorizations and thresholds as we, put the warrant together. But certainly out of state of town, some of the details on care control, custody, financing strategies, and then going forward, I imagine if we're taking over additional assets, if we're making changes to, any type of, not necessarily assessments and things, but we're looking at different financial strategies that we want to make sure we're writing the right language in to adopt the right charter and the right chapter and verse to provide that kind of relief.
So there's a lot of authorities under state law that town meeting can accept, or related to
senior tax relief.
Senior tax relief, exactly.
Yeah.
Those are a couple good examples, and
many communities have already accepted them. There's boilerplate language for all
exactly,
of that.
and we've accepted some, but not others. So it's like, and what goes to town meeting, what goes to select board, like that. All of that kind of work would be
lots of threshold matters. I would say
Yeah.
have come up and have all been resolvable, but just not clear. Like where's responsibility lie? What's the right timing and sequence? The type of thing.
Do either of you two have any questions, burning questions that you'd like to put to these good folks? Okay.
Okay. Well, if anything does come up, feel free to reach out and get in contact with us.
Absolutely.
You know where to find us. Our emails are all public.
Yes.
And I hope that your emails do not get caught in our spam filter the way our current council's does. If that's something that you can fix.
That's not on you.
Yeah.
Hasn't happened yet with anything when you and I were setting up this. So, well, thank you very much. We really appreciate the time. Obviously, we would very much love to come in and work with you all and your staff and your board. So we look forward to hearing back from you.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Really
much.
nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you all.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was nice to meet you. Thank you so much. Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Is it scheduled?
I will, thank
Hi,
you.
thank you.
Good to see you.
Thanks to meet you. Thanks for coming in.
Yes, thank you.
If you I'm sorry, stuff down.
Yeah, my favorite was the offending reverse false claims act. I'm sorry.
That issue would trigger MMA really.
Yeah.
So I was just
Exactly. I do legal now and then now.
Nice to meet you, Michelle.
You just like need me
Yeah.
It was a lot.
We're having our first town meeting to appropriate money for specific projects.
Oh, yes.
21st.
Well, we did our bylaw at the same time.
Oh, okay.
So it was just very complicated. Yeah, so it was like
Luckily
everything
for us
was
to
at once.
Oh,
And
wow.
a lot of people were
Yeah, yes.
upset about it that I didn't necessarily.
Yeah, I haven't had any appeals.
You know,
Yeah.
Just in the middle of
opposed, but I don't know.
our cases.
All right, well, I know you have other people to talk to in a meeting to continue to run, but thank you so much. It was great to see you again.
When all the arguments come to fruition, we really got to the heart of the issue.
My colleague just hit him with a summary judgment motion, which I think 6,000 pages of the appendix. And, yeah, that's a longer story. Spotlight did a 2-article feature on it.
Great meeting you. Thank you.
Access WinCam is behind you, so just know that. I'll do quick introductions. Actually, my colleagues will introduce ourselves. So I'm Michelle Pryor, I'm the chair.
Anthea Brady, Vice Chair.
Bill McGonigal, just member.
Parsippany, member.
Mike Betancourt, member.
And we'll ask you to introduce yourselves here in a minute as well. You should assume we all have your response and your question to our questions, and thank you for coming in this evening. So I will ask you to introduce yourselves and then maybe talk a bit about the firm and where you're currently working as town council and some of the areas that you think distinguish yourself. So I'll start at this end, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. My name is Lauren Goldberg, and I'm the managing attorney at KP Law. Our firm represents over 1/3 of the cities and towns in Massachusetts as city solicitor or town council, as I know you saw from our materials, and many more as special counsel. We have been around for over 45 years. In one form or this one, we bought the firm, the shareholders bought the firm in 2013, and we've been operating since then as KP Law, actually since 2016. We, as you may have seen, provide legal services in the broadest range of municipal law that you can imagine, and that is really by design. We have about 50 attorneys, many of whom are statewide experts in their fields, and I say that with all sincerity. I, for one, came from the Secretary of State's Elections Division and have worked at KP since the year 2000, and have been the managing attorney since 2013. The team that you have before you is a very senior team. All of us are shareholders, at the firm, and I will leave it to them to tell them a little bit more about themselves.
Sure, thank you. My name is Tom McEnany. I've been at the firm, it'll be 30 years this October. I started my career, my entire legal career has been in municipal law. I've worked as an attorney for KP for 30 years. Prior to that, I was a law clerk with the City of Lynn Law Department, which is my hometown. So basically that's what I've done throughout my entire career, has been in the public sector. So I specialize in a broad range of municipal issues. I do a lot of municipal governance type issues, town meetings, open meeting law, public records, as well as contracts and procurement. I chair the firm's contracts and procurement group. I also do a lot of tax work, either in terms of tax title collection work, as well as appellate tax board appeals and eminent domain property valuation cases, as well as some liquor licensing as well. So.
Good evening. My name is Janelle Austin. I'm a shareholder at KP Law as well. Happy to be here seeing all of you this evening. I've been at the firm since 2006. Prior to that, I clerked at the City of Boston's law department, and prior to law school, I had significant experience in working in government affairs and public affairs. Decided that public sector law was the route I wanted to go in, and essentially joined the firm and haven't looked back since then. I handle a lot of municipal finance, town meeting as Tom does, as well as public records, open meeting law, and government transparency issues. I also specialize significantly in working with police departments on firearms licensing, as well as the post-commission implementation, which has been something that cities and towns have worked on the past several years following police reform. In addition, I regularly advise and also litigate on civil rights cases, as well as constitutional considerations, including with respect to First Amendment compliance and free speech issues. I am the chair of the Government Access Group and really enjoy working with cities and towns on all of these new and evolving issues that everyone is facing, particularly the past several years. So I'll turn it over to my colleague, Carolyn. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you. Carolyn Murray. I'm a shareholder and a member of the management committee at KP Law. I've been involved with municipal law for over 30 years. I started out as a paralegal working for a town before I went to law school and decided this was absolutely what I loved to do. KP, or at the time Copeland and Page, was kind enough to scoop me up in my final year of law school, so I started there before I graduated. And with the exception of a brief hiatus where I left to go work in-house for the town of Braintree as they transitioned from a town meeting, Board of Selectmen form of government to a mayoral form of government, my whole legal career has also been with the firm. I have done everything from labor to covering town meetings, municipal finance issues, licensing, but in the last decade or so, my emphasis has really been land use, and in particular 40Bs. And we recognized from doing some preparation for this interview that 40Bs are certainly something, some land use issues are certainly some activity that the town has. So we thought it would be good to have me be here in case you had some questions with respect to that practice area. So thank you.
Thanks. Go ahead, Bill.
Sure. Well, you bring up a great thing to start with there. What did you do to prepare for this interview?
We have some folks in-house who will pull together some materials for us. We do things like we'll look at your charter, look at your bylaws, sometimes just Googling recent articles, looked at a few of your town manager reports that were available online, things of that nature.
Did you happen to watch any of our recent select board meetings or other board or committee meetings, or even our most recent town meeting from last spring?
Did not review any town meeting videos, no.
So based upon what you've seen in your preparation, what is it that you think Winchester needs when it comes to its town council?
I think that varies very much from town to town, and I think a lot of it is driven by not what I think you need, but by what you want and you need. I think we'd all universally say that, you know, for example, with the select board, we're not your sixth member of the select board. We're going to provide you advice. We're going to provide you with timely advice. If you ask us for a specific recommendation, we'll make that recommendation. If we think that you're going to go down a path that perhaps you can't go down because state law might say otherwise, we're going to jump in and we're going to tell you, no, you can't do it that way, but perhaps there is another mechanism that might be available for you. But in the time that I've been doing this, every town is unique. They have their own personality. Town meetings are widely different from community to community. Some town meetings, for example, I'll go to, and members of the select board or even the moderator will say, it's a good town meeting if we never hear you speak. Other town meetings, I feel like I'm a jack in the box, you know, just constantly, you know, up with the next question and whatever, you know, whatever it is that you need. So it's going to vary very much based on what you need and what you expect from us.
And I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, that's okay.
You should feel free to answer questions. If I'm correct, Tom, you're the one who's kind of tapped
yes.
to be...
I will be the primary contact person, correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So with that, because if you are our primary, how are you going to manage communication and advice and everything else, both as it comes from us with questions and then when it comes back from your team, to make sure that, you know, everything's being understood, everybody's on the same page, and we're not wasting time or money, you know, asking the same questions over and over again,
right. Or,
you know, I have one understanding, Paris has another one, and we don't know what we're doing.
Right. I think...
no offense, Paris.
No. I think we have a proven system that has worked, and it really is tailored to each individual client's needs. So some towns I'll deal primarily with the select board chair. Other towns I deal primarily with the administrator or the manager. In terms of, I know you have, just looking at your website, you have a number of different committees and boards in town. So how do you want to manage contact with those boards and council? Typically, I think what generally works pretty well is kind of working through the town manager. So there may be certain department heads or certain board chairs, for example, that are authorized to have kind of somewhat carte blanche to contact council if it's, you know, the town planner or conservation agent or building commissioner or somebody like that. Or it may be that somebody has that authority for a particular project that is ongoing and kind of a hot issue in town. But for the most part, it works best if it's kind of funneled through the town manager's office and through town administration if it's not the town manager, to kind of just kind of keep an eye on who's contacting council, are they authorized to contact council, and we can better help you manage your legal budget in that fashion, because I'm sure that's a concern, I'm sure, here as it is every place else. It also maintains consistency, right? If I get a call from one person, I get a call from somebody else, inevitably you're not going to get the same facts from both people. So we try to do most things probably by email. You know, there's going to be a time when you call us at 6:30 because you have a question that's coming up for a 7 o'clock meeting, and I'll give you a verbal answer over the phone for something like that. And so we try to be available 24/7. You'll have my cell phone number. You'll have my home, to the extent that anybody still has a home phone, which would really be my cell phone, email, and generally we're available. If I'm not available, Janelle is proposed as a backup, and she and I have worked together in a number of different communities, and it's worked really well. So I think that's kind of, you know, how we would approach it, is really to tailor it with you and with the town manager.
And, sure. And actually, if I could just add one thing, in terms of how we keep track of it on our side.
That was my next question.
we like to copy, the way that it typically works best for us is if we're copying the town manager on all of the correspondence back and forth by email. Mm-hmm. So just like it's not a surprise to the town manager, it's not a surprise to Tom or Janelle. So they will always know what's going on, and if they can't handle a particular assignment, not because they couldn't, but because someone else will be able to provide you with a more comprehensive answer faster, then they will assign that to that person who will work under their supervision. They'll monitor that. And all of the back and forth that might involve. And then that is in our system. We save every email of substance. And so if, today you ask us a question and then 5 years from now you ask us that question again, either Tom or Janelle will actually remember. Even if not, though, we'll do a search on our system first. We're not going to do the same work over and over. It doesn't benefit you. It doesn't benefit us. And if the law has changed, then that's really easy to say, we gave you this opinion 5 years ago. This was the answer. This is the answer now. It also means that we have a record of the facts that were at issue at the time, and all of our opinions, whether they're emails or letters or even memorandum, they all include a fact section so that there can be no, question. Well, did he know blah? Yes, he knew it because it's in the email. So that's how we manage on our side.
Sure. And kind of with that, you for our shareholders, and obviously, Tom, you're going to be point, but you're not the only ones doing work. And I have worked in big international law firms, and I've worked in boutique law firms, and I've seen bills get very large, and I've seen bills get cut down, much to a partner's chagrin. How does KP, because you guys are the largest law firm that's applying for this position, how do you manage your own staff to make sure that hours are not being, rightfully but expensively inflated?
Well, I can tell you that it's just as important to us as it is to you that there aren't extra hours being spent on things that we're not going to be able to provide to you. We do care very much that our bills are anticipated, understandable. We're very specific in our billing so that you can look and see, oh, it took whoever X amount of time to do that thing. We do have newer attorneys who work with us, and it is part of the legal profession that it's essentially an apprenticeship as you get more senior until you get more senior. So we're also teaching them. We have a lot of trainings in-house, and when we assign something to someone to work on, ultimately I'm responsible for the assignments that I make, and I'm responsible to Tom or Janelle if they give me something to do. We only pass along to you an appropriate amount of time. We would never, if we have a newer person who maybe goes off track when they're working on something, number one, they're going to come see us in 2 hours because that's required. But number two, you will not see that on the bill. And we have no problem from our perspective making sure that the bills that you get are appropriate and scaled to what you should expect, because again, it's our reputation. You can't represent the number of cities and towns that we do and not be very sensitive to how important it is that when you go to the grocery store, someone isn't saying to you, how could you have hired them? Their bills are ridiculous. We write all of our bills so you can literally hand them out if someone makes a public records request. And that's really important to us.
And I think the other thing to piggyback on that is if you take a look at our municipal client list, the vast majority of our clients have been with us for decades. We're not in this for the short term. We are in this for a long-term partnership, and our goal is to be your town council for decades.
Sure, yeah. So kind of with that as well, Tom, if you're at point, and you're the first person we go to, approximately how many communities do you directly, personally manage in that role?
Sure. So the primary towns that I'm the main contact person for are about 4 or 5 towns right now, and I have a couple other smaller towns that really don't generate any legal work, some small towns out in Western Mass. So there's like 4 or 5 towns that I generally am the primary person for. And it varies to the level of involvement that I have. I get copied on everything. I'm aware of everything that's going on. Some towns are more real estate or land use heavy, which is not an area that I practice in, so the land use person will deal with issues there. We also do labor and employment work. I know you have separate labor and employment council. I have a couple towns where they're very labor and employment heavy, so it tends to be more involvement with the labor and employment council. But I can assure you that the reason why I was asked to be the primary contact person for the town is because I do have availability to be able to take on a new, bigger, important client like Winchester.
Sure. What are the 4 other towns that you currently provide the primary contact?
Swampscott, Georgetown. Steve Delaney was the town administrator when I first started doing work in Georgetown. Hamilton, Salisbury, and Sutton are the primary towns that I'm the main contact for.
I grew up just in between Georgetown and Salisbury.
Oh, okay. What town?
Byfield.
Okay, sure.
Do you know it? Do you,
Yeah,
you do. Is there anything in particular about those towns that you think would help you be, well suited to help Winchester? Because obviously every town is unique.
Sure.
Every town has its own special unicorn.
That's right.
But,
Yeah, I think Swampscott, for example, I think is a similar size community, similar demographics, not exactly the same. They also have a representative town meeting as well, which I think is helpful because that's kind of a different animal than your typical open town meeting. So I think Swampscott would be one that's fairly comparable in some aspects.
and what in particular do you think is, what has been some success that you have brought to Swampscott that maybe you can translate to Winchester here?
Sure. I think, well, when we first, years ago, before I was the primary contact person, we had very minimal involvement, believe it or not, with their town meeting. Subsequently, as the administration changed, I ended up becoming much more involved in terms of reviewing and drafting warrant articles, drafting motions, setting up and scheduling and preparing the town meeting prep meeting with the various moderator and other town officials who were going to be kind of speaking on different warrant articles. So, and it really has evolved into a much more comprehensive approach to town meeting than what was originally in place before I became the contact person.
Okay. Now, am I correct that during your time as town council of Swampscott, it would have replaced its town manager?
Yes, they did.
Okay.
Yes.
What was your involvement in that process?
So I know, well, we're also labor and employment council there, so it was a little bit different kind of role, I think. My personal role was fairly minimal. I assisted with the procurement issues concerning the hiring of a consultant to assist the screening committee. I handled some open meeting law issues and public records requests involving the screening committee. I worked very closely with the acting town administrator, my colleague Darren Klein, who does labor and employment work, and negotiated the contract with the acting town administrator, negotiated the contract with the new town administrator, and assisted pretty much with all aspects of the, as questions came up with the search committee.
One thing that we are in the middle of right now is, well, I wouldn't say middle, maybe the beginning, early in the process of a search committee to find a new town manager. Are there any particular lessons learned you have from that experience in Swampscott that you would think are very important that we keep in our mind as we move forward?
I mean, it's one of those things, I think it's just so individually tailored to what it is that you're looking for and what you need. I think having in Swampscott's case, or really in any town's case, I think having a good solid screening committee in place is always helpful, to have some representation from the select board, from other stakeholders in town hall, as well as perhaps somebody from the community as well, schools. I think that's helpful to try to get a broad-based candidate pool that then you can narrow down to try to figure out, okay, who's going to be the best fit for the town? What are the qualities and characteristics that we're looking for? What type of experience do we want in a town manager to come into a town like Winchester that has unique issues that aren't going to be kind of cookie cutter like you have in other communities?
Sure, that makes sense.
Actually, if I could just add to, and I know maybe Janelle you want to speak to, but we deal frequently with public records requests and open meeting law issues with screening committees. I think, where so many people from the private sector who are successful and used to kind of making calls and decisions and coming to meetings, as one member of a board of water and sewer commissioner said to me, why do I always have to come to the meeting the least prepared of any person in the room? Because of the way the open meeting law works. And so I think, making sure from the start that the screening committee is well-trained,
We often deal, and I'm not going to speak directly to Swampscott, but we often deal with significant and complex public records and open meeting law issues. Resume requests for non-finalists is one example that comes to mind. Requests for executive session minutes, preliminary search committee, and the ability to meet and who can meet in executive session. As well as, after an appointment is made, kind of the next evolution of that and the request for personnel records, as well as resumes, notes, the release of executive session minutes, which we all know have to be done according to the Attorney General's office at reasonable intervals, so every 4 to 6 months. So it's a process, as you all know, and that process often continues well after an appointment is made, and there are complex legal considerations relative to all of those government transparency issues along the way. So it's something that we certainly, all of us, try to be very proactive with, because we've seen it play out across the entire Commonwealth, to really be able to advise the board and/or the preliminary search committee as to the legal considerations that are at play. But it is something we've been, we well versed in and have dealt with in a variety of communities.
And then you only have 10 days to respond to the request, so you got to give that advice fast.
Yes, 10 calendar days for executive session minutes, not the business days.
Yes.
Correct.
Can I ask a follow-up here?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
So that was specific, it sounded like, to town manager, but obviously OML and public records law are things we deal with everywhere, right? So we just would be interested in, take OML in particular, which is for our town, we have a lot of volunteers, we have a lot of bodies, is one that is always something we're trying to give people advice on, or guide other committees on, as well as ourselves. We'd just be interested in what you think some of the big topics have been. As I have said, it's obvious that the quorum of a board shouldn't go off and have a private discussion. Everyone gets that, but the more complex, more subtle things that you've seen sort of trip communities up, or where you've needed to weigh in, would be helpful.
Sure, absolutely. So evolving issues and best practices, I call it, in the open meeting law. The regular review of executive session meeting minutes is something. Obviously, the intersection of the open meeting law and the public records law, both in terms of how technology is expanding and the increased use, shall we say, of appointed volunteers and technology, and how that plays out both from an open meeting law perspective. I used to be, back in the day, would advise best practices for email, or don't send a fax, message back and forth. And now we're more cognizant of social media issues, not only Facebook, Reddit, text messages, WhatsApp. I've conducted trainings for the MMA, the Mass Municipal Association, as well as serve as a faculty member for the MCLE on these particular topics. I think the use of technology is really something that cities and towns grapple with in terms of efficiency, and obviously the goal is to be efficient and get things done, but the open meeting law and the public records law obviously governs those practices. So I think those are some particular issues I can think about. Also, the use of task forces or advisory committees is something that I regularly advise communities on. Just because something isn't called a subcommittee may not mean it isn't a subcommittee. So there is a really detailed factual analysis that the Division of Open Government uses to determine, how a particular public body was created, what is the specific goal of that public body, who is that public body advising. And I think, in a community such as yours, where you certainly have a very active volunteer base, those are some issues that certainly could come up.
Thank you.
Janelle, I think you tapped as the person who knows a lot about land use. Is that?
That would be Carolyn.
Okay.
I can talk about posts if you'd like.
But I think I saw in the materials, are you town council for Truro, or have you been both of you?
I have done, yes, with Kelly Clark, town council, yes.
Sure. Were you counsel during the client litigation down there?
No, I was not particularly involved in that. I have worked with the current town manager, Kelly, for a long, long time on government transparency issues, but I was not personally involved in that litigation.
Okay, but you know about it.
Yes.
It's a good example, I think, of how difficult land use questions can be when there's I think someone used the term hot button topic. Was that your term?
I don't know if it was or not, but
But
I'll take credit for it.
And if it's not fair because not everyone here knows what the client decision is. If you want to summarize it, please feel free.
Are no one here knows?
Yeah. It was a big fiasco. How do you advise towns to make sure things like that don't happen, especially when we're working on things like 40B projects and we don't want to get mired in litigation, and where there can be lots of competing interests across a town that can end up in very expensive, protracted litigation like the Klein case?
So I can speak generally. I mean, I am a litigator as well. I can say the goal is always to be, I'll let Carolyn speak to the specific 40B issues, but the goal is obviously to be proactive, right? And to keep all of you informed in terms of where any particular issue is and what are the risks and benefits of pursuing one direction over the other. I mean, the goal of litigation is not to ultimately have to litigate, but really to avoid that step unnecessarily. Obviously, there's going to be different circumstances if you have an enforcement case or you are the plaintiff in a particular case. That's going to be a different story. But I will say the goal is really to be proactive and to analyze very carefully and closely at every step along the way the risks and benefits of any particular decision, to make sure any client is well informed in that.
On the 40B issue.
On the 40B issue, do you have a specific question about 40B or?
Well, I guess I would be, how would you make sure that we are successfully navigating the 40B process? We do have a number of those projects around town right now. I would consider all of them to be friendly at this point, and I think we want to keep that. But, you know, when it comes to land use, there are lots of opinions out there.
Oh, yes.
And so, you know, what's your role in making sure that we cross the finish line in a way that gives us what we need, protects our interests, and doesn't run up our legal bills?
Right. So I guess it depends, just to begin with, you know, what do we mean by friendly 40B? You know, are we talking about a real friendly 40B like under the local initiative project, or are we talking about let's keep it friendly? It may not necessarily be something that the select board is putting their imprimatur on the application to the state, but you also don't want it to turn into a bunch of
More the former.
you know,
I would
folks
say,
showing
than
up
the
with
latter.
pitchforks.
Yes.
So I'll just kind of tell you generally what, I mean, I would have to say that the vast majority of my practice at this point is just 40Bs, whether it's appeals, safe harbors, litigation involving it, but most importantly, it's working with your local zoning board. If we were talking about a true friendly 40B as a LIP, one thing that I always suggest to, because it usually always starts with a select board, right? You know, do you want to give your endorsement to this particular project? And if you can bring yourselves to the point where you think this might be a good location or it might be a good project, if you can bring the developer in and start having conversations about, look, maybe not 60 units, but maybe we could live with 45. Maybe we don't want you bringing the access from that street. We want you to do it this way. You know, the massing is just too much. It's not going to fit into that neighborhood, whatever it is. A lot of those things, if it is truly a LIP, the select board's in the driver's seat. It's like, we're sitting here with the application with the pen in our hands and you want us to sign. So let us tell you what we want. You know, we want to make sure, for example, that it's rental units and no conversion to condos, because we want to maximize the number of units we get on the SHI. We want to make sure that, you know, we have a water pressure issue in that area of town. We want you to help fund a water booster station or something to that effect. We want you to connect to a rail trail. We want you to provide a dog park. You know, all sorts of things that really kind of help shape a project before you actually decide to endorse it. And I know that most zoning boards, if it's a LIP project, they feel like their work is kind of done for them, because you've already gone through all of your various department heads. And in some ways, they say it's sort of like, give me your Christmas wish list. You know, if you could get anything you want, you're not going to get everything, but if you could get anything you want, or what are the real needs here, or what are some other projects that are going to be hitting that particular area of town? What are some capital projects that we're looking to focus on in the next 5 to 10 years that maybe we could see a way that this developer, maybe they give us a slice of land so we create a right turn only lane or whatever it happens to be that makes it just work better in your community. I always find that if we can do that through the LIP process and negotiate an MOU with the developer in advance, that MOU is going to be attached to or incorporated into that zoning board decision, so it just becomes a little easier for the zoning board to deal with impacts and how to mitigate those impacts. Now let's take.
So can I ask?
Sure.
So that sounds obviously a very constructive way to pursue to convert hostility into something that benefits both sides. What would be the role of council in that kind of a discussion? Obviously, the select board will have the town's priorities, but what role would a council play in that?
It might be meeting with the board, and I'd say select board. You might also have some interaction with some other department heads to sort of look at, okay, what are some things that we might be able to get out of it? Or we've identified these are some of the concerns with this project. So what are some ways that maybe we could mitigate against that, or some ideas for mitigation? And I would negotiate that agreement on your behalf. Meet with you, the developer, maybe a representative of the board, and we sit there and try to hammer it out as best we possibly can. Sometimes we're also bringing in like your DPW director or your town planner, whoever it might be that really has, your fire chief could even be, to make sure we've got adequate access and fire pressure for firefighting systems down there. Then once, the MOU is actually signed, off they go to the state with their application. We wait for them to come back with their project eligibility letter. Now let's suppose we don't have a LIP context. It's just here comes a 40B. It might be friendly-ish, or it might be something that's highly controversial for a variety of reasons. I always start with training of the ZBA, because no matter how many projects you have done, you have turnover on your boards, and it may very well be that if you've got a couple new members on your zoning board, they need to know what their marching orders are. What can they or can they not consider in a 40B context? And even those who might be more senior members, they can always use a refresher, or there might be what they think they can require or get out of a 40B, but what they think they can get and what they can actually get may not necessarily always sync up.
So it would be, in your view, a good practice to have council talk to a ZBA before starting a permit hearing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Interesting.
And I've done that sometimes just as a private working group with the zoning board. I've done it with the zoning board plus, say, some staff that help support. I've also done it where the public is present, because we want the public to understand the 40B process too. That has a slightly different dynamic, but it is sometimes good for the public to understand that this is not about what the impact of this project is going to be on our school systems. That's just not a valid consideration in this context. Then,
sorry, under
Sure.
under the statute or under the executive office's guidelines, there's specific criteria in a comp permit they can ask about, and then there's stuff they can't?
Yes, and there are certain things that the regulations of the statute will provide, but then the rest of it is just through like Housing Appeals Committee decisions over the years of what, you have to have a bylaw, a regulation, some sort of local rule, and it has to be, it has to foster a public health or safety issue. And we have to find that compliance with that rule is more important than the need for affordable housing. And, these are all kind of fancy terms of art that the Housing Appeals Committee throws around, but it might be something as simple as you can't have a dead-end street of that length and of that width because your largest fire truck needs to be able to get down there and turn around. And oh, by the way, once your fire truck is down there, you got to be able to have water to be, whether it's through your hydrants or other systems, to be able to, God forbid, fight a fire down there.
Very interesting. Thank you.
If I could also, I was going to say,
yeah, sorry.
That's fine. That's fine. I was going to say, no, but you asked, what was my role? Depending upon what a town wants, and most opt to have council present, at the zoning board meetings. They sometimes feel that it helps to sort of level the playing field because the developers coming in with their counsel and their engineers and all these other experts, and sometimes these folks will say things that are not completely truthful about the process, right? Oh, no, you can't do that. You can't ask for that. Well, that may not be the right answer. So I usually sit with the boards through all of their hearings, help them through the peer review selection process, and draft their decisions for them. And then, of course, if they get appealed, I've got those too.
Thank you.
Sure.
I have very specific questions that I'm asking. So one is, we mentioned all our towns are unique unicorns. We have some specific, we have a lot of waterways going through Winchester. It used to be the town of Waterfield. We also have a commuter rail line. So can you talk a bit about experience working with sort of on our side, conservation commissions, DEP, and then MBTA, and sort of around, so if you've noticed, we have a brand new MBTA station that opened, 2 months ago?
Probably back to Carolyn.
2 months ago.
So we have some folks within our land use department that specialize in wetlands and waterways issues. So in all likelihood, if you had, you had a Chapter 91 license that had to be renegotiated, or you have, wetlands or bordering vegetated wetlands, whatever it may be, it would go to one of our good, solid conservation experts as well. And it just so happens, you also mentioned MBTA. One of our colleagues, who's the head of our land use department, Amy Quessel, she's our head person to go to for all things that touch water, whether it's coastal issues, internal waterways, wetlands issues. She served on her own town's conservation commission. And during the whole MBTA, and I know we're still sort of in the MBTA bylaw adoption process, but Amy was our point person who literally every week had a on-call standing phone call with folks at EOHLC as well as the Attorney General's Municipal Law Unit to talk about, here are the issues that communities are having, trying to figure out how to properly model this or make this work.
So just to be clear, I think she's talking about the literal MBTA.
Oh, okay, sorry. Thank you.
The 3A about a year and a half ago, so fairly, for us, smooth sailing at town meeting with that. But we,
You want to know about the
but we do, we have the, the commuter rail runs through the elevated, through the center of, right through the center of town. So that also, comes up with building, or when they were working on the station there, negotiations around the easements and things like that. So
all of that, again, as well. I guess I should also, in interest of full disclosure, when I was in law school, I also worked at the State House on the Transportation Department, the Transportation Committee, while they were working on the Big Dig, but also while the Greenbush line was being reinstituted down to Situate.
That went smoothly.
Yes, there was one particular town that, got jealous of another town getting
where my in-laws live.
getting a tunnel, and, so we have dealt with whether it's land acquisitions, temporary easements, permanent easements, again, mitigation with respect to parking, or maybe even some concessions that are made to a community that, how many grade crossings do you have? And grade crossings, back up all of your traffic. So, is there some kind of an offset, or maybe some sort of a middle point? Or the communities that don't want horns, even though they're certainly a critical safety component, we have dealt with those negotiations as well.
I think some of the things that we kind of come across sometimes are, there's the day-to-day and things run fairly smoothly, and then we hit a snag when we come to those tricky things where we really need council to know the lay of the land and to be able to kind of step in and guide us or guide the town manager's office or staff in like something that we might not have seen before, but
Right, and I think that's one of the benefits of our firm, is given the size and the breadth and depth of our practice and the number of years that we've been doing this, we have, I'm not going to say we've seen everything already, but we have seen something similar, most likely in the past in another community, and we can draw on that experience through our database and our systems that we have in place in the office, as well as the number of people who have been at the firm for, all of us have been there for many years. A lot of our attorneys have been with us for a long time, and so we're able to draw on that expertise, which is a benefit to you. It's much more efficient, obviously, too, from a legal cost perspective in terms of trying to manage your legal budget when, if there's something that it might take me 3 or 4 hours to research an answer to on an election issue, but I can call Lauren because she was counsel to the Elections Division and she can answer the question in probably 10, 15 minutes. So, and that's really, I think, what we really bring to the table here and in other communities that we represent.
And actually, if I could just piggyback on that, I think, it's the fact that we have so many experts who have really experienced these particular types of issues really works to the benefit of every town that we have. For example, in a town where I'm the lead attorney, they have a historic building that they use CPA funds to renovate. And then they wanted to lease that building to an entity that would essentially install a restaurant in that building. And so there were real estate issues, there were land use issues, there were just regular contractual issues, as well as kind of the way the town feels about things. And so I was involved in all of the parts of things, even though my expertise is not really in many of those areas. However, obviously we have a really strong team for that town. And so we were able to, as a team, kind of approach with the town manager and the chair of the select board, and their chairs have changed over the years, their boards have changed. And this has been an issue that's gone back to the mid-2000s. And so we're able to bring all of that kind of to bear on this proposed project. And I think it really kind of speaks for itself in that we have developed this over a number of years, this way of operating with one another. And we have very well-established relationships at our firm. We're all on the same team. There's nobody who's saying, oh, I don't want you to work on that because that's my client. It's the opposite. It's like, Janelle, this is a really difficult public records issue. Help, please. And that makes a huge difference in what we're able to offer you. The other thing is, we never need to ask for outside counsel to step in. We never need to say to you, oh, please, we've never dealt with that. Let us, recommend somebody who might be better at that. We are better at that. And, it's kind of funny to hear when people say, well, the fact that you're a large law firm, how do you deal with clients when you're a large law firm? And we're like, just the same exact way that you would deal with clients at a small law firm. The difference is we have a bench of well-respected, experienced people that we trust, that we work with on a daily basis, that we can bring to bear for you. So I do think that issues like MBTA projects, 40Bs, acquisition and sale of real estate, dealing with Article 97 land and replacing Article 97 land, we have that full range, and it is not hard for us to try to figure out how to work with you. We already know, if that comes up and John Eichman is your real estate person, then John Eichman is on it, and he's going to work with Tom to understand the bigger picture and then to provide advice. So, we are excited about those types of projects because it is exciting to be able to help you guys to achieve what you're looking to achieve and to be able to stand ground, when you're challenged. Because a lot of times we do see very kind of expensive Boston lawyers who are sitting on the other side saying, this, you can't do that, as Carolyn said. And we're like, we actually know what those regulations say, and yes, we can. So for us, it's personally rewarding, and it's rewarding to be able to help you achieve those goals.
So I've got a question slightly different. It gets to town meeting. So of, a lot of firms that we've talked to, a lot of attorneys around, some of you, function as, volunteer as moderators in your town, elected moderators. Do you have an opinion, at least at this table, on town meeting time versus Robert rules on your town meeting operation?
Sure. Well, one of our colleagues, a member of the firm, Roger Smerridge, he is a moderator in his town as well. No, we work with both. Like, for example, a lot of the towns where I'm the primary contact person for, the majority of them use town meeting time. However, Salisbury, for example, uses Robert's rules. So ultimately, it's going to be a choice for the town to make. Town meeting time obviously is designed very similar to Robert's rules in many aspects, but is focused more on specifically town meeting. But oftentimes when I'll go to town meeting in Salisbury, the moderator will have both Robert's rules and town meeting time up at the podium with her. And I usually do the same. But we're comfortable dealing with either Robert's rules or town meeting time. And ultimately, if the town were to make a change from Robert's rules to town meeting time, that certainly would be something we would be able to adjust to without question.
Great.
Just which one? Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Do the follow-up.
I was going to ask, which one would you recommend to a town if they asked you open up?
I feel like at least most towns tend to use town meeting time. I feel like it's designed specifically for town meeting. It's definitely one that most people often refer to more frequently. It's ultimately as your call. Generally, I think most people would use town meeting time because it's specifically designed for town meetings as opposed to just general kind of procedural guidelines that Robert's Rules offers.
Thank you. Every moderator has an opinion, I've learned. Go ahead, Mike.
Thanks, Michelle. And thank you all for coming in. It's great answers to our questions. Mine, there's really no wrong answer to, more of just what your experience has been lately with any new issues on the horizon or something you've seen like, hey, we've got to keep an eye out on this, or something that we hadn't expected, or just for our benefit, because you guys have your eyes in a lot of different communities around the Commonwealth.
Sure. I'll go first and I'll turn it over to Janelle. So I think the biggest issue we've seen probably in the last couple of cycles of town meetings has just been municipal funding issues. I think with we're seeing fewer federal funds kind of coming down to the local level, as a result, fewer state funds coming down to the local level. Costs have gone up in terms of wages, insurance, and everything else that cities and towns need to buy. And so it's really putting a significant strain on municipal budgeting. So we've seen a lot more overrides, a lot more debt exclusion questions than in the last few cycles than we typically have seen. I saw an article recently where the Senate President talked about, the possibility at some point of perhaps some legislative changes at the state level with respect to Proposition 2.5, although that's not something that has been really, it seemed like a very preliminary trial balloon that was being floated out there. But I think things like that are different opportunities to kind of create new revenue sources for cities and towns in terms of new development. Obviously, you've seen a lot of changes in the zoning context with MBTA and ADUs recently. But municipal financing, I think, has been one of the biggest issues, and we'll continue to see as, I think, cuts continue at both the federal and state level for municipal funding.
I agree with Tom. I think another new and evolving issue that is facing communities is both constitutional and government transparency issues, as well as data privacy issues. We're seeing a significant uptick in public records requests, data storage issues. I'm thinking in the HIPAA inquiry context. There are software programs that communities are getting, which is great. Those obviously need to be closely vetted for data breach considerations, and that's something, I'm not sharing anything that isn't publicly known, that's been widely covered in the media. The risk of data breaches is significant. I think that's a newer area. The implementation of police reform and the adoption of the Post-Commission's various regulations is something that I've been tracking since the law went into effect a couple of years ago. In addition, since the Barron versus Kalenda decision, which was the free speech decision that issued several years ago by the SJC, the Supreme Judicial Court, a lot of constitutional and free speech considerations impacting public bodies, civil discourse, as well as First Amendment and constitutional and civil rights considerations kind of across the board. I've been working with police chiefs across the Commonwealth on Second Amendment issues in light of the Supreme Court's decisions in recent years as well. So all of these, while maybe happening at the Supreme Court, obviously have significant local impact as well. And we regularly provide both trainings and client updates on all these novel issues, and we really do stay on top of them just to make sure you all have the most up-to-date information because they are evolving and there are best practices that really do warrant careful consideration before it becomes at that stage where a further response might be required. It's better for you to have that information first and us to be able to tell you that versus having to be reactive, particularly for more high-profile matters. So those are something that come to my mind.
And since we wouldn't want to leave land use out.
Never. I don't think it left.
I mean, we've certainly seen over the past couple of years a slowly chipping away of local authority in zoning, whether it has been MBTA zoning or by right ADUs or changes in the quantum of vote for zoning amendments. But one that I think perhaps is not getting as much attention was a so-called clean energy bill that was passed last November that would regulate solar installations, but also battery energy storage systems and systems over, I believe it's 25 megawatts. Will be able to go straight to the Energy Facilities Siting Board to get approval and not have to come to local boards anymore. There's also a provision that if municipalities perhaps don't have the technical expertise for the smaller projects, that we could petition the Energy Facility Siting Board to take it off our hands, so to speak. But I think more importantly for municipalities is this idea that this comprehensive permitting and an application process and hearing process is going to be implemented. The regulations are supposed to be finalized by March of 2026. There are draft regulations out right now. I think there's some communities that might feel relieved to have this sort of taken off their plates, so to speak, and I think there are other communities that are going to feel like they've really had an element of local control taken away.
One last question for me, then if you guys have questions, assuming nobody else has one. Because, yes, we are subject to Prop 2.5. We're going into an override, most likely put to the voters in March. So we're looking at our operating budget. Can you give us an estimate, maybe just looking at Swampscott as an example, as to what the annual fees are there? Are they also on an hourly basis or a retainer fee, or?
They have, Swampscott has a retainer.
Yeah.
So for general municipal work, it's under the retainer. And then litigation and certain larger type matters are separate. I think if you saw in our proposal, it had included in there the anticipated hourly rate based on if you were going with a straight hourly kind of formula, and it also did talk about the potential if you were interested in negotiating some sort of a retainer agreement. So
yeah,
we have retainer agreements in some communities. It's and it works well in some instances. Some instances it probably works less well than others. But it's just it's a matter of, it's hard to do sometimes at the beginning when you first come in as town council, because you're not really sure how often and what type of usage town council is going to have. So if that was something you were interested in doing, could certainly talk about that. We would generally recommend that after, say, 6 months or 12 months or so, we would come back and meet with you to say, okay, if you were on an hourly basis, this is what the value of those services that we rendered would be. This is what the retainer is. We've had situations where we were off, and where we said okay, the retainer is going to be X, and then it turns out, based on kind of the predicted use that we would have for town council, and we have had situations where we've gone back and said look, we're charging you on a monthly basis of X, and you're using significantly less than that. So let's talk about changing retainer downward as well. So it's not typically a situation where we just go up. Often, I can think of at least 2 or 3 different instances where we've gone down on the retainer based on what we kind of looked at prior legal usage over the last couple of years for the community to try to get a gauge of, okay, how much is appropriate on a monthly basis. And, it hasn't kind of come to fruition for whatever reason.
And what is the retainer amount for Swampscott then?
I don't know off the top, to be honest with you. Okay. And it's obviously any litigation matters or large kind of projects are separate.
Yeah, litigation you can't.
And I can say, because I have responsibility for looking at all of that on a regular basis, I don't remember the number offhand either, but I do think that the retainer works best when everybody knows what is expected. And we have in our proposal, we have a list of the types of things that we typically include within the retainer and things that are outside. And the outside is mostly things that are adversarial in nature.
Yeah.
In terms of kind of how we arrive at the number, we look at what you use town council for. And sometimes that means looking at bills from prior town council to get a sense of how often were they going, was the town going to council, and what types of things were being asked. Were we being asked to come to meetings 5 nights a week? Were we being asked to do office hours? Do you have a one-night town meeting, or like you guys, a multi-night town meeting? And looking at all of that together and at what your budget is, we would talk about and negotiate a retainer amount that felt right. But as Tom said, I always commit, even at 3 months, if we're looking at 3 months and you guys are not getting any benefit for the bargain, we're going to come back to you and we're going to say, let's talk about this. This isn't fair. It's not what we're looking for. Tom mentioned it earlier, but it is kind of a mantra. We're not in it for the short term, not looking to make a bunch of money and say, yeah, we were council for a year. We want to be around and we need to establish relationships. And the only way to do that is to be forthright and honest and part of your team. The one thing that really upsets us is we'll hear, well, outside counsel came in and they're built, and we're like, no, that isn't who we are. We're not outside counsel. We're part of the town's team, just like you have a planner or, a treasurer, a collector, a clerk. That's, we have that role as well. And none of them would say, like, we're not going to work with you unless you pay us X dollars. Well, maybe they would. But for us, as I said earlier, our reputation really matters, and coming up with a number that makes you feel good and that's fair, because we are a business. That's kind of the magic number that we're looking for. And we are never going to tell you, we're not going to talk about our fee structure. We have a proposal, and that's what we've proposed. It doesn't mean that we won't have a conversation about it and figure out what do you need to make you feel good about the deal that you strike. And, if that means more upfront for us, that we're putting in more time and we're not getting paid as much, we get that. We want you to trust us and to value us, and, we need to start off on the right foot. So I do commit to you, if we were to move forward, then we're happy to sit down and have this conversation at an open meeting. We can talk about it. It's it's something we're proud of, and we're happy to discuss. So
thank you. Okay. Well, we're at the hour. Any last minute questions from our side?
I don't think so.
Any questions from your side?
No, I don't think so.
No, but thank you very much for having us.
Yeah, thank you. It was nice meeting you all. Thank you. Thank you very much. Have a good rest of your night. Thank you.
We're rolling right into a meeting, so there you go.
Yeah, we saw you have a long agenda.
Oh, that's short for us.
We'll go back at 7:30. We've been in session since 5. We'll welcome people that are watching. Steve Delaney has joined us, our acting town manager, Michelle Pryor, Anthony Brady, Bill McGonigal, Paris Bayani, and Mike Bencourt. We've gone through some town council interviews this evening, and we will then just dive into our acceptance of donations. If any member of the public wanders in, we'll let them chat, but we'll just start moving through.
Move that we accept with gratitude an EEC stabilization grant of $13,720 for the Recreation Department kids and RAP EEC childcare license for the month of September 2025.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Move that we accept with gratitude an in-kind donation of $3,500 from the Winchester Basketball Association to repair surface cracks at the Manchester Field basketball courts.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Next up is the town manager's report.
So we have, under appointments, we have several. The first is, under the provisions of the charter, I've appointed a full-time permanent position in the town manager's office of the procurement administrator. The individual's name is Brian Wincoop from Watertown, and given that he will be starting several weeks out, there's no need to waive the 15-day requirement. So that's the first one. Second one is kind of an interesting one and a good one for the community. It's the appointment of 4 temporary full-time training police officers, if you will, called student officers. And the 4 individuals are from Winchester, which is pretty exciting for the community. The first is James Cogan III from Winchester, Robert DiVincenzo from Winchester, Leonard Massa from Winchester, and Stephen Vozella from Winchester. All 4 individuals will transition to full-time permanent patrol officers with no further review by the board once they've successfully completed a variety of tests, including the academy. So congratulations to those 4. So,
Just to be, the memo says that Fishback and Johnson will transition.
No, that's
typo.
They all do.
typo.
Okay, so it's all 4 of them.
That's why he said 4 individuals,
All right.
Yeah,
and that's why it's not.
the follow from the chief, I think.
We got
But
it.
remarkable that they're all Winchester residents. I kept watching like, wow, okay,
It's great.
that's good.
And several updated items for you for this evening that was in your packet. The first is the Mystic School basement structural analysis, and I did a follow-up with you today. The short story is that in the course of maintenance being performed at the school, it was discovered that one section of the basement under rooms 1 and 2 in the pre-K area, that there are concrete structural supports that appeared to be weathering or beginning to show some structural stress, if you will. So the situation has been examined by a structural engineer. Structural engineer didn't see any immediate threats, but under the abundance of caution, as we say, suggested that we move any programs out of those 2 rooms while a remediation plan is developed. We've committed with this engineering firm to develop a full potential plan for bracing, if you will, or repairing to a point where the area can be reused and reoccupied. It will include bid specs and a potential construction cost for this program. That's still in the works. We would expect to have that probably within the next 2 to 3 weeks at the latest. As you can imagine, Nick is very anxious to correct this issue down there. But we've taken the first step. I will also add that the inspection included the rest of the building, and this is the only spot in the building that has this issue. The building basement is dirt floor, which was pretty common in those days, and the hunch is that it's probably some moisture over the years that have gotten into the concrete, and it's caused some spalling, if you will, with the flaking of the concrete. So we believe the structural engineer says it could certainly be braced and fixed to hold it. The question is it long-term or not? And we don't know the answer. So we'll have more info for that as we get more info from the engineers in the next week or two.
Can I ask you a few questions?
Sure.
Do you know who the engineering firm is?
I should know that.
I think Weston and Sampson did some work there with the heating issue about a year ago. Because they might be more familiar with
I'd have to, I can get the name for you. The engineering firm has done work for the town in the past and were very responsive, and the name is completely out of my head at the moment.
That's fine.
I can get that for you.
Yeah, you're still new, Steve. And the next question really might not be fair because of that. Am I right? Are these the two classrooms that are, sometimes we could say they're in the annex?
Yes, they're the rooms that had the recent redo of the windows.
Yeah, and the ones that are also historically cold.
Yep.
Probably
Yes.
that's why they got the windows.
But the windows look awesome. I saw
Yeah.
them today.
But that's the wing, yes.
Correct.
Okay. Well, if there's rooms to lose, it's the cold ones, I guess.
Any other questions on that one? The second item, which we raised last week, is the clerical union memorandum of understanding. The union has ratified their portion of it, so that piece is done. It's before you for your consideration.
Yep.
And as I said, I can go over the details of it if you'd like, but it's a pretty fair settlement overall. Also, I mentioned that we're working on the Wedgemere Station parking license agreement. That's complete. Town Council's reviewed it. It's done for 10 years, and we're all set. Public Works reviewed it. And it's one of those unusual arrangements that we have with the state, but it's worked well, and everybody seems happy with it. So that issue is done. Parking will continue, thankfully, and so without a problem. The state's actually been wonderful on this one to kind of help us through it, so that's worked out well. And as you will have noticed in your emails today, your authorization to keep Mark on as on an interim basis has been quite invaluable to me and to our staff as we're trying to pull together this warrant and the motions. Mark has done phenomenal work on this, and I'm just very grateful that have your okay to have him aboard through this period. So he's been terrific. So those are the 4 items I've got for you at this point.
Okay.
Any questions?
I don't think so. We'll take up the MOU after we go through the warrant and some motions, so toward the end-ish of our agenda, before we get to executive session. So, any questions for Steve? Okay. Is anyone here for public comment? Mr. Band? No. Okay. Don't want to assume. Okay, the first item of business, town manager's position profile, which we got in our packet. And we have a couple of things to approve, Anthea, I think?
Yeah.
Well, the overall.
The overall position, if there's any questions or notes that anyone had on that. But the 2 highlighted in yellow at the end, the salary and benefits and resume review timeframe, need our approval on those. Proposed was review of resumes would begin on November 3rd, or the week of November 3rd.
Maybe November 4th.
So, yeah, the 4th of
But I guess the week of, is that how it's written? Is it the week of? It certainly
yeah.
should be understood that way.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So that means that they think they'll have resumes in hand to review at that point.
Yes, so it would be posted once we give the okay and be open for about 3 weeks.
Is the number a number we came up with or a number they came up with? Meaning Collins Center.
I believe that's a number that they came up with.
Yes.
We shared what we had provided in the position description 3 years ago with them. I don't remember what that was, but it was lower than that. That was 3 years ago. So.
They felt like that was a competitive.
Yes. That's about where we are right now. Maybe it's a little bit below where we are right now, but there's sometimes stipends and things. So that salary range, because I think, Anthony, you had pulled some comps or at least the old.
Yeah.
They suggested that salary range. If they think that that's a salary that will attract some candidates, I don't see a reason to change it.
Yeah, it's comparable to Belmont, Andover, Arlington, Sudbury.
That's fine. The only other potential edit I add is on qualifications, where we say experience in municipality or other public position. I would personally say experience in a municipality, other public position, or large nonprofit, like somebody who's been at a Mass General Hospital or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, a hospital or a university.
That makes sense.
I didn't have any questions.
Yeah, beyond that, I'm good.
I thought it looked good.
All right. I'm happy to send that edit in Paris. And if everyone is good with that and with the review of resumes date on November 3rd, I think we could vote our approval of the profile.
Do people feel like we can? I mean, we can make that motion and we can still debate it, but that is
I'm
our
ready
task.
to approve it.
Okay.
So I'll move that we approve the Town of Winchester, Massachusetts Town Manager position posting, position profile with the edits as described.
Second.
Any additional discussion? No? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And thank you to Mary and Becca for producing a nice product.
I'll send that back to them to confirm and let them know where.
So one thing I want to, as they come together, screening committee and other things, I want to make sure, Steve, I'm saying this out loud for you and for the board, that, we hired Collins to do some of the heavy lifting. We said, like, we'll provide food when we have people in for interviews, but I want to make sure that the work that they say they're going to do stays with them and doesn't bleed over to Patty, bleed over into the town manager's office. And I'm not exactly sure where those blurred lines might be, but I would just ask Steve and Patty to be mindful. If it feels like we're doing, they could do coordination if Mary's going to be the contact person. They could probably do coordination for meetings. They could do some outreach. So I would just ask you to let us, you can contact Mary as well.
Yeah, they'll do a good job.
Okay. Good. Maybe it's just a question that's moot. That's fine. But, okay, we voted that and we approved that. So the next topic is Deputy Town Manager. Mike Town had pulled together Deputy Town Manager kind of job descriptions from about 4 different communities. The goal tonight is if there's any one town manager position that we think kind of is the closest to what we might want. I met with the personnel board last week. I'll go back to them on Thursday, and they will create the position in the compensation schedule. But they'd like to have a job description, realizing it may not be like the final version. Like, job description can change, but they'd like to have a position to go with a new, job description to go with a new position. So I had a chance to review them. I have a preference, I think, on what probably makes, the most sense for what Winchester might need. But I don't know if people felt strongly about any town manager position that we would say, this is close enough. Because as Steve told us last time we met, there's, the duties and the qualifications of the person will largely be dependent on the town manager, what they see as needs. But certainly things like budgeting and capital and staff supervision, or being a point of contact and being the second, that's pretty consistent. So if people have one that they think makes sense, I can share that with the personnel board. Mike Town attends those meetings, and I'm on the agenda to go back this Thursday.
I like the Needham one.
I didn't know that's what we were reviewing them for. I read through them all, but I didn't read through them with that sort of eye.
I think you could pick out pieces of the other ones, personally. I mean, like, for example, standing in for the person, some of the union negotiation pieces of Lexington's and Concord's. But I thought for the long-range financial planning piece and the sort of coming up with metrics for the operating departments and that kind of stuff, I did think Needham's it was kind of not just a second town manager, but it was kind of a proper deputy who would be like a COO for the town.
That was my preference as well.
Yeah, I think it's also sufficiently vague enough.
Yes.
It's very specific in what those tasks are, but sufficiently vague, and it's not like supervises department X, Y, and Z to the nth degree, but it provides that scope of responsibilities versus discrete tasks.
And this is something where clearly if we have an assistant town manager, that's what's in our charter, that may be the hire that the new town manager makes. If in a year or 18 months or 5 years, a deputy they think is just another bump in pay, a different level of responsibility, it's a starting point for job duties. And that's really what we're trying to do, is create placeholders in the comp schedule and placeholders in terms of job duties. But we're not committed to Anthea's point, it's sufficiently vague. We're not committed to they must do all of these 18 things.
Sure. Have we asked our somewhat deputy town manager to look at any of these to see if
He was the one that actually tracked these down for us.
Oh, he was?
Through Mike, yes.
Oh.
And shared them with us. Yes.
Did Mark have any feedback? Or?
He did not want to weigh in.
Oh, really?
On one or the other. Nope.
Okay, that's fair.
But he did track them down at our request. Okay.
Well, I don't want to hold up the process, so if three of you are already big fans of the Needham model, then...
Big fans might be a bit of an overstatement.
So North Andover's was the one
That was my second.
Yeah, I agree with. And then the Lexington one's probably not super helpful because there's.
I think that one would be really hard to translate to something for personnel board without us doing quite a bit of work to it.
Weren't there two in Lexington?
Mm-hmm.
One finance, one in general administration, I think.
Yep.
There might be two in...
That may be why. Okay, they have two.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure there's two there, one on the finance side, one on the administrative.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
The question is, are there some pieces of North Andover's then that are worth grabbing? But some of the pieces are on like planning analysis, supporting committees with that type of analytical support that were a little bit more just the town departments in the Needham one, which I think would be helpful to include from the North Andover one.
Yeah, I think, taking it to maybe an interim step would be taking it to, if we have an assistant town manager description, comparing, like, do we need to add anything? Because I think the Needham one, I don't know, the more I look at it, maybe I change my mind, but it kind of has some more words, sort of more descriptive of like supervision and management than some of the others. And so making sure that when we're having deputy town manager versus an assistant town manager posting, as we look at them, the deputy town manager should have more supervision, management
responsibility
type of responsibilities versus support and direct lines.
Yeah, and Needham specifies 6 to 8 direct lines of responsibility. So,
but I think the one thing with the North Andover one, which I think we don't want, is to just take. I mean, the two individuals can decide this, but we don't want to advertise it as these are the 6 departments you manage.
Correct. Mm-hmm. And we don't advertise any of it. It's truly the town manager's responsibility. We're not involved in assigning that in the day-to-day. So, are we still okay with Needham as a placeholder? Okay. So I'll take a motion just so that I can tell the personnel board we agreed as a group versus me saying so, but.
Motion to present the Needham deputy town manager job description to the personnel board for discussion of salary bands, steps, and duties.
Can I just friendly amendment with, and
Absolutely.
also to give them North Andover's to draw select items from? Is that okay? Or are we only going to give them one?
We can share that. I'll lead with Needham, but I can do that.
You accept my amendment?
I accept your amendment.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Next is outdoor dining request. I thought we might have Mr. Covino here. That's why I put this on the agenda. So I'm going to just quickly say it, and potentially we just move along. Jim Covino emailed Steve last Tuesday asking for, and it's in our packet, asking to extend outdoor dining through the end of the month. I wanted to put it on the agenda so that if he was watching or anybody else was, that it actually had a hearing, but we could have just as easily had the town manager direct him to our policy, which is basically Mother's Day weekend to Indigenous Peoples' Day weekend. I don't feel the need to revisit that policy. I felt like we had a pretty robust debate in January. We had retail, we had restaurants, we settled on a good compromise, I thought. But I wanted to put it there in case anybody wanted to weigh in, and nobody has weighed in. So, do people wish to revisit that policy? And if so, we could make a motion.
So the only thing I would say about the policy, I mean, I don't know we necessarily have to revisit it, but it's always kind of evolving based on the weather and activities and things like, so it's been a moving target for, several years. So with, warm weather coming up, I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it, but
I think at this point, I don't know. I'm not sure you need to hire the truck to come 15 days out, but I'm guessing some people are scheduling to break down their setups.
Yep.
Monday the 14th, so a week from tomorrow. So to sort of approve it tonight and say throw it another couple of weeks, you have to push some of that duty out. I think if this had come in earlier, perhaps, or we could also take it up in the new year. That's just me.
I think we had a good discussion last year. I like the idea of just holding to the policy, so there's some foresight and expectation around it. But I'll say that really the best thing that could possibly happen would be if the businesses come to an agreement between themselves and they don't need us to mediate it.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Maybe we're getting closer every year, and to Mike's point, it's evolving. It's been wider. We've pulled it in. We've had some compromise. I felt like where we landed in January was pretty good.
Yeah.
The chamber.
I mean, the First House and To Catch a Falling Star came to an agreement on the parking spaces.
Yep.
That worked out better for those two parties than the way we split the baby. So.
Yep. All right. So I'll entertain a motion, but if no one's going to make a motion, we'll just move on to the next topic. I just wanted to make sure we discussed it.
The motion would be to extend it to the end of the month.
Yeah.
I don't know that without.
Did he not give a date?
No, it didn't.
It's just the end of the month, which is Halloween or November 1st. Okay.
I think that we had extended out that far in prior years.
Correct.
And
it was getting dark early, right?
Yeah. I guess I would be inclined to support it, but not necessarily without any notice to the retailers or to any of the other restaurants.
Oh, yeah.
Because
that's a good point too.
I think that's causing trouble.
Yeah. Okay. So are people comfortable just moving on to the next item of business then?
Yes.
Okay. Fall town meeting warrant. You have two things at table. You have the warrant, and then you have Patty's highlighted motions. We'll do motions next. But tonight we need to finalize the warrant, which is everybody's items, not just ours. And it goes to the printer this week. I think tomorrow, Steve?
Yes.
Yes.
Just as a footnote, too, the motions need to be done by the end of the week, and you don't have another meeting scheduled.
Correct.
Just as a...
Yes, we're trying to get through motions. Paris, are we doing State of the Town on Friday, if we needed to?
I think we ideally wanted to. I think we have to take stock of how much we can get in this week. We might have to cancel it.
So we should go with, this is our meeting for the warrant, and this is our meeting for motions. I think we should work with that assumption. And if there's any one motion that we can't get to, we just need to quickly spin something up. Okay.
Sorry, just for the sense of select board procedure. So for our articles, we obviously have the warrants here and the motions in front of us. Do we need to agree on the motions as a board?
Yes. Yes, we do. And then we'll take positions on all of these motions and warrants at a later date.
Eventually, yeah. But
yes.
This week we need to approve, not just, of course, the warrant, but actually our motions as well.
Correct. So the warrant is 37 articles long. A few things came on, a few things came off. Mark worked, I think I talked to him about 7 times today. easily. I just get one, but I just had my earbud in my ear, just waiting for calls back. The town meeting time article is here. Oh, one thing I would like to do is take an official vote to, it has been removed from this packet, is the Everett Ave culvert. But Roger did follow up with us via email. I shared that with everybody. I'd like us to officially take a position that we have removed it with kind of capitals urging. And because it's not here, but I want to just sort of for the record document why we pulled it.
I move that we withdraw the Everett Avenue culvert from the Fall Town Meeting 2025 warrant.
Same.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. So from what we saw, even what Anthony and I saw last Thursday, solar has been combined to one article. Town meeting time has been added. Everett Ave has been removed. So that was a lot of moving parts at the end of last week, but this is where the warrant is. Patty, I'm sorry, more so Jen and Mark and Steve have been working on this pretty much all day. And at this point, I'm pretty sure that Mark thinks it's in order. Steve, I think you and he have reviewed it, and Jen, so
Yep.
this is what will go to voters and to town meeting members.
And it has been reviewed by
Council.
appropriate council as we've been going through this on each step.
Yep. So we can take a motion to approve the warrant as printed. People can still continue to look.
So moved.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second, I'm just paging
That's fine.
through.
I'm not going to call the vote just yet.
When will we build the consent agenda piece of it?
That will be, there's some discussion that the moderator has had with Mark. There is we can see a draft of the consent agenda, I would say by our next week, but I don't know that it's been finalized, Paris.
But several of these will move to consent or no?
Correct.
Very well, that's right.
Several of them we will, that's right, like PEG, cable access, and standing committees. We're looking to move the healthcare stabilization to consent.
That's what I thought. That's why I was wondering. Yeah,
That's
and
right.
Much of the FinCom ones are consent, I think, as well. Okay.
But that was, there are probably a good 6, 8, don't quote me on that exact number, that have been tagged for consent, but just in the interest of getting it all buttoned up today, I didn't ask to go back in and put those parentheticals.
Is the Committee on Rules actually going to bring Article 3, or are they just going to IP it again?
That one will be, sorry,
Which one's that?
Which one?
The one to...
that's going to be IP'd. Mary Ellen had a
Oh, the
description
attendance
of
one,
that,
yes.
but I think it was only a handful of people, and most of them were like
Excused.
illness or work travel that they,
Just take it off?
No.
it's lives there.
It's pretty standing.
Damage is IP.
It's standing.
Yeah, no, I know.
I once got cut up in that one, though. I got a little letter talking to, but I didn't get kicked off. But it is there. Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second.
I'm ready.
I'll wait for Bill to flip to his last page.
I reviewed whatever was emailed, and it was fine by me, so.
Yeah, it's not substantially different. There might be a word here or there, just and cleaned up, but it's, nothing new came on beyond town meeting time.
Sometimes things look different on paper than they do on the screen, so just giving.
Ready to vote?
I am, absolutely, yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, all right. Now take your highlighted sheet for town meeting motions, the other thing that Mark was doing today. These should be our articles. We don't need, I mean, we should approve Article 1 motion language, it's pretty standard. Take these one at a time.
Motion to approve Article 1, motion to approve the motion for Article 1 as presented.
Second.
Excellent. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
I don't have a problem with these motions, you know.
Any of
We
them?
we want to vote them all at once, if anybody, unless
Do
anybody
people
wants to
feel like,
discuss.
do they want to? That's a good call, Mike.
Yep.
Thank you. Are we good with OPEB at 350?
Yes.
The town meeting time is in there. You know, like one tweak, Bill, for example, that today was the handbook, 4th edition, 2024, like those kinds of like clarifying statements on town meeting time. That was like a change that, just trying to catch up every last thing.
Town meeting time.
That's, looks like Article 15 right now.
Yep. First page.
And then the Lynch custodian is the same dollars, same cost that we got from Pete Lawson. That will have 2 budget items. It'll have the departmental budget, personal services, and for expenses. That number we got from Pete Lawson. Lynch solar is 20. Health insurance stabilization is 22.
Oh, the article number, not
Yes,
the
sorry.
dollar number.
Not the article number. And Forest Street is 28. Mystic School is 29. 30 is Heroes Act.
31 is a HEROES Act.
31 is the Heroes Act. Okay, 30 is other senior relief. Thank you. And then 32, senior citizen circuit breaker. So thanks, Mike, for that point. If we're ready to vote it as a slate, we can vote it as a slate. We'll give people a minute.
I'm fine voting it as a slate too. One just comment for the group's benefit, because only Michelle and I got this note from the solar folks, really from Ken Pruitt. For Article 20, there's still going to be some discussion about whether we go forward in this way with $100,000 from free cash for engineering studies, which we talked about last time, or whether we, and there's, again, the group is meeting very frequently on this, ultimately choose to go for an RFP process under 40A, which I believe is the procurement law. We'll sort of take guidance from the working group on that, and if that's where we end up, we'll IP it, but we'll know that, obviously.
Closer to the meeting.
Closer to the meeting. We wanted to make sure, though, that we could proceed on this basis with the $100,000 for engineering, if that's what we choose to do.
And I think the other piece of keeping this on the warrant, even with the motions, is what we rolled up all of these sites, high school parking lot behind the middle school, to educate town meeting on where these potential ground-mounted arrays may be, and potentially a roof-mounted solar. So just to highlight that. And I think a presentation with some pictures would still be useful.
Yeah,
this is where we intend, potentially.
So if we choose to pivot the procurement vehicle, we'll just do that.
You can do an updated motion as well, if need be.
Good, yeah.
Any additional question before we vote the slate? Okay.
So motion to approve the motions as presented.
Select board motions.
The select board motions as presented for the fall town meeting, fall 25 town meeting.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
And thank you to Mark. I don't know if he's watching or not, but I know a lot went into this today. Because my phone lived it. But it was a ton, including 415. Okay. Next up is the clerical MOU. We have some details Steve talked about in his presentation. We need to approve the MOU, but the union ratified this, was it Friday?
Friday.
Okay. And we had a chance to ask Steve some questions, or at least hear a presentation Friday morning. So if anybody has additional questions for Steve on the MOU, now would be a good time to ask them.
Motion to approve the Winchester Clerical Workers Union Local 888 MOU as presented.
Okay. All those, any additional discussion? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, and thanks to Mark and Mike and everybody else, Steve. Appreciate that. Paris, next is Select Board Committee updates, and there's a couple things coming out of State of the Town. Do you need
Yes,
to?
we have a good amount to go through today, so this is going to be long. There's two main topics, really two main topics.
Welcome to July. Thank you.
Why does that happen?
It's two-factor.
It's two-factor security.
Oh.
Who are like in stereo.
Every computer that's in the town, it's actually hooked up to our cell phone, but I'm not having this hooked up to my cell phone.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank
Why
you
not?
for the code.
I'm not going to be here forever.
No.
Just get it at home. Yep. Is
It's
that?
all three of them are up there. 'Cause I don't know if you want, I didn't put the town line up.
So these are documents that have been, pretty actively reviewed at the State of the Town table a couple of times. I think they've each had really a dedicated session on them, and then smaller sessions as well. So I just wanted to take everyone through them, and there's no strong decision. Well, there's no formal decision points tonight, but these are things we'll have to start to decide on at some point before the end of the year. So we wanted to make sure everyone's tracking it, and also the State of the Town table doesn't get as much attention because it's not on camera. So make sure that people are who are watching are able to track it as well. So the first thing, and this is just more of a framing that we've put together here, which is to talk about sort of what we're trying to achieve with State of the Town. We drew for 5 principles from a variety of documents that have been created, many by the Select Board, some by the Planning Board. The first one obviously by the School Committee. The principles that we use to guide the town. And then what we've done is we've taken each of those principles, and as you saw this hour-long plus hour-long discussion at State of the Town, remember this, and broken them into what we have to be proud of and where we have work remaining to be done. And I bring this up because this framework is, and it goes on for sort of 3 pages for each of the 5 areas. This framework is what we've used to guide our work. And so what we're going to talk about today is 2 things. One is senior tax exemption, which goes to the 4th principle, which is inclusiveness of both longtime residents and newcomers at all stages of life and cultures, in all cultures. And then the second to last one, which is focus on a natural and built environment, including climate action, natural green space. So when we look at, for example, the focus on the natural environment, one of the things that we've talked about is pursuing restoration of town-owned historic buildings and other key educational and municipal assets. That's really the principle that underlies the capital work. And then actually it's the bullet right after that under inclusive for all residents in all stages of life, which is deepen and extend tax mitigation programs to veterans and low-income individuals to protect cost-burdened populations. That's kind of what we're talking about. I just wanted to give, because this has been debated at State of the Town, but it hasn't been seen outside of that, which is what's the overall framework we're using to guide kind of what we're doing. And this ties out each of those goals on the right side to the relevant area that we've looked at. Okay, so not news to all of you, but it maybe news to people watching. So we wanted to start with and Bill, if you want to start with capital, we could. It doesn't matter which order we go in.
No preference, Paras. Yep.
So why don't we start with the residential exemption? So this is a concept that we've again talked about at State of the Town. We've talked about it a little bit in this at this table, which is, and we'll get into the specifics here because this presentation is really about the nature of how it works and the technical aspects. But first, let's just take a step back and talk about why we would look at it. So this is an idea that was given to me by a former select board chair. All of you know him, Jimmy Johnson, who said there may be a provision in state law that you can use to defray some of the impact of an override or a large exclusion on some of the folks who live in more modestly valued homes, tend to have been here a very long time, often are lower incomes, and in the vast majority of cases are seniors. And he sort of said, go and take a look at this, and I came back after doing some work on it and showed it to him, and he said, yeah, that's actually exactly what it is. We thought originally that we needed to get special permission to do this from the legislature. We don't. It's a authority granted to us under state law that the select board actually controls, and the select board actually votes on it every November, along with what's called the split rate, which is the commercial residential tax shift, and then the conservation land. And select board in Winchester has always just informed the assessor that we're not interested in it because we've never done the work to really dive into it. Most places sort of proceed on that basis, but now it could make some sense. And so the philosophy here is simple, which is that we have a subset of our town, call it a few percentage points, for whom we can say, you bought a house maybe 30 plus years ago, it's appreciated in value, the person's more than likely a senior. Can we come up with a little system here that allows us to defray the impact of an override on that individual. What you see here is the first kind of most important thing, which is that this benefits owner-occupied residential. It does not touch the commercial or industrial rates at all. So whatever the exact tax factor they have today, they would continue to have. It does none of that shift to commercial that towns that have big commercial bases do. That's not part of this at all. That's a completely different idea. That's not what we're looking at. And it also does not raise the aggregate amount of taxes. So the amount of revenue collected by the town is identical. This is just a question of, can you take a little bit of a burden off of a subset of the population? So that's what you see here on this page. And the break-even point for where a property is neutral based on the exemption is our median property, which is about $1.5 million. Okay. So today's levy, you see here, 126 million, roughly, of which about a little more 120 is residential. You see our residential tax rate, which is 11.09. I think this is last year's, but you see it sort of more conceptually. And then we also have the CPA surcharge that's in effect as of this past July, which is a 1.5% CPA surcharge. All of you know, but just for those watching. And so what we've taken a look at is for various sizes of override, and we've just modeled 3 even numbers here, 5, 10, and 15. What would happen currently to various homes at various prices, and then what would happen if we put an exemption in place, again, at various levels. And I'll flip the page, but it's a little overwhelming, so I just wanted to start with that. So yeah.
One point of clarification, go back a page. I'm just thinking, this is maybe just like language. Break-even point of 1.5, maybe the better way to think about that is the, no impact,
No
right?
impact, yeah. That's the same idea. No impact, agreed.
It's breaking even to the town, it's no impact to the homeowner.
Oh, no impact to the homeowner, yeah. The whole thing is break even to the town, to be clear.
Right,
Yeah.
so I'm just thinking that might just be a better way to label it when you're talking about it maybe in a different context.
Yeah, for sure. And we need to add some of the background here. This is really just more the math. So what this does is it would say, and so just to start with, under state law, we can implement an exemption anywhere from 1% up to 35%. Okay? The cities and towns that have implemented 35% tend to be cities, Boston and Cambridge, and some of the very high levels of vacation home towns on the Cape and the islands. There are a couple of peers that have implemented exemptions that are lower, and so the best peer is Concord, which has done a 10%. Okay, so you go anywhere from 0 to 35. So the next page is where you sort of see it in action, and I'll actually go one page past this. So look at the upper panel here. This is This is the current rate in bold, and what a homeowner pays at various levels of the assessed home value. So somebody who has a $1.6 million home, which is just above our median, is paying about $18,000. And somebody who has an $800,000 home is paying about $900,000, about half. With a $10 million override, just take last time's override, and with the CPA, without an exemption, this is the second row, that $800,000 home is looking at a $710 tax increase. A $1.6 million home is looking at a $1,420 tax increase. So what we could do, and this is the concept I wanted to float with everybody, is if we implemented an exemption, and you see 4 different exemptions shown here, just as examples, because you obviously pick one. If we did a 5% exemption, which would be, along with MASH-P, the lowest one that's ever been implemented, of the towns that have implemented, that would cut the increase by a little bit more than half for that $800,000 home, from $710 to $291. The $1.6 million home, because that's slightly above 1.5, has a modest increase, and then the upper value homes have a larger increase to pay for the lesser increase on the homes that are well below the median. 10% where Concord is, in this case, at a $10 million override, that home would actually get a modest tax cut at $175. But then, of course, you're putting a little more burden on the upper valued homes. Mm-hmm. So this is a concept that exists to create a little bit more of a dual structure to allow us to protect, in particular, seniors, folks who have been here a long time, from the sharpest, increase of an override. The final point I'll just say is the levy, of course, has no exemption in it today. So this would be net new. And the idea is using it to cushion a bit on the override. CPA, when we implemented it, we did put a $100,000 exemption in place there. The select board town meeting chose to do that. A $100,000 exemption is about 7.5%, just to dimensionalize where that is in terms of 5, 10, 15, or 20. So that's the one we have. And obviously nobody thinks about it because it was done at the same time as the CPA was put in place. This would be saying, how do we, if we have an override coming, how do we take a little bit of the edge off of some of our most modestly valued homes? Concord, which is the town that did it most recently, which again I said did it at 10%, and I have a bunch of notes. I talked to their assessor at length, and I talked to their select board chair at the time. She's still on the select board last night for a good bit. Concord did it because they had done an exclusion for a $110 million middle school, and so they were again trying to defray some of the impact of that on a project that overwhelmingly benefits school-age families, on their senior population in particular, who tend to live in the more modestly valued homes, who are not as obviously benefiting from that project.
Horace, do we have information on kind of how many households in kind of each
tier
sector tier it would impact?
It's a good question. Yeah, the bottom tier is a single digit percentage. So the 800,000 and under is like a 5-6% type of number. Below 1.5 million is 50%, right, roughly. So there's a lot sort of in between an 800 and a 1.5, 1.6. And then to the right, where exactly are, we just picked these columns, for evenness, frankly. We can get if people want to see it against these columns, 800, 1.2, 1.6, 2, and 2.4, 2.4 and up, we can get that from the assessor, because that's an easy pull from his database.
Didn't your bar graph show some of that from a couple pages back? That one? Isn't that a percentage of how many households fall in the different ranges?
Yes, you're right, it is. That is what that is. Good catch. Yeah.
So you have the answer to Mike's question.
Yeah, we made that bar graph long enough ago that I forgot. It is there. You can kind of eyeball it. And so no, it's a little more than 10% of the houses in the sub 800,000 group. It's a single digit percent of the value. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
But we can present that more clearly.
Yeah.
If we want to entertain this further, the right way to do it is to have a discussion in November at our classification hearing, which we have every November with the assessor.
And the assessor will be in October as well. He's asked to be on the agenda for a senior circuit breaker. Mm-hmm. So we can tee it up we could tee it up then, and we could take a more formal vote in November. So just to give you some time on this, he emailed last week asking for some time on October 20 or 27.
So he's coming in on the 20th?
There you go,
It's
20.
going to be on the agenda listed as a senior circuit breaker. If there's any other discussion, then we have to do a line item for the...
Might as well.
Yeah, put it on.
Residential exemption, yes.
So again, this is more to talk about the concept in a forum where, everyone's here and more people, at least in theory, could be watching.
Do you want feedback?
Just feedback, reactions. Do people like the idea? Do people not want to do it?
I like the idea. It seems to be what we're talking about all the time. I mean, whenever we discuss overrides, debt exclusions, anything, the first concern we all have is protecting the people who can't as easily afford it as others. And this is the approach to do that, isn't it? I mean,
correct.
We have a structural deficit. It has to be addressed, but we can give some help to the people who need it. And if this is the best way of doing it, then it should be explored.
Mm-hmm. So one thought I have is we should discuss as a group is it's 5 versus 10. I understand 5 is pretty low and rather not popular. 10 is maybe the sweet spot for us, but that if you look just at those down below, the $2 million house that has a $1,775 increase, they get 5, 6, that's an almost $750 more at 10% versus 200 exactly, right?
Correct.
$200 more. So
300 exactly.
So I just think I agree with Bill, we've been talking about it, I agree in concept entirely. Paris and I have talked about this at State of the Town. I just think if we're doing it for the first time, the increase at a $10 million override, and again, that number's not baked in stone either, but that increase and jumping to that and shifting to 10%, we've never done it before, I think we should just be thoughtful about 5%.
So a couple of thoughts in response to what Michelle said. So you can pick any number between 1 and 35. So
Yeah,
you
we could do
pick,
7.
You could pick 7, you could pick 6, you could pick, so that just want people to know that. Most people do pick a somewhat even number, but not always. You know, the Concord assessor who was walking me through it gave me some that were like 30. She had them all handy, and some of them are like 33, and you know, some of them are
8.
somewhat odd numbers as well.
Yeah.
So they don't have to be even 5s. But here your point stands nevertheless, Michelle. The other point is that the select board would vote on this number if you implemented one, and both changing the number or even whether to keep it at all annually. So this is an annual choice that a select board makes. So let's say you started at X and then you went to X plus 1 or X minus 1. It is an annual exercise.
And it's a choice and a vote we could take in November for, you know, the next fiscal year for July. If we put an override question on or we don't, if the override passes or it doesn't, it's an independent decision that we can choose to make to go down this residential exemption path during this fiscal year to implement it maybe for the beginning of the next fiscal year. And the override's fate, we should just be committed to making a residential exemption as part of our policy, whether or not the override passes.
So to your point, Concord they had already had their exclusion go through and then did it sort of afterward, right?
Yeah,
They got
so we could do it in the other order,
Right.
but we could just commit to doing it, and then we can see how things play out in the spring. But we'd still would be committed to this path,
Right.
which is fine. And we revisit it every year and change it.
Right. And one point you just said, Michelle, I think it's really important people understand the timing and the best practice around the timing. Concord did theirs at the classification hearing in November and implemented in January, and it was brutal. Because here's why. Because for a residential exemption, people have to actually fill out a one-pager, sign it, and turn it in. And so you have to go out and educate people that, hey, you got to claim this. Once you claim it, that you don't have to do it every year. Then they have your record. Then the assessor only has to mail to the new homes that have turned over in town. But that first year, you need time to go out and get a couple thousand forms back or a few thousand forms back. They got something like 3,700 forms back. And 7 weeks was really hard on their assessor. I think the way you just said it, which I agree with, and when I talked to their select board chair, and very much when I talked to their assessor, it was give yourself until July, which is the start of the fiscal year. So you have the full 7 months to educate your town, council on aging, everybody, to get these forms in.
Yep.
No, I think this is a very clearly, well, I like rows and columns. I think this is very clear. But if you look on a different page, I think it does sort of describe clearly what the intent of this is and how it would work. I did a very rough search of the property database. Over half of the properties over $2,400 were purchased in the last 10 years. So it's
$2.4 million.
2.4, yeah. So that does kind of, support this intent of that as well. Sort of a rough data point that can support the intent of this is really to.
Like, what do you think?
Yeah.
You haven't been at as many of these State of the Town meetings. I feel like Paris and Anthony and Bill and I have seen this presentation like 3 times.
Yeah,
But I understand it better every time. That's not an insult. But I mean, you've
talked about this for a little while. It
Okay.
makes sense to me. I think to your point, I think whether we have an override or not, that we need to probably vote this soon. And it seems like the number is in that 10% range. So
maybe it's between 5 and 10.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. So
I'm not going to die on the hill.
I'm in favor of voting that sooner rather than later.
Yeah, so to the point that both Michelle and Mike have said, this top panel is actually just the current levy. Let's just assume we didn't have a structural deficit and we didn't have to do an override, or it didn't work or it didn't pass. That's what you'd see for each one. That's just the current levy. So that $1.6 million house, again, it's funny because 1.5 is the level of neutral. We just wanted even numbers for everyone's sanity. So you see 1.6 gets a bit of an increase, but then the 1.2 gets a bit of a decrease, and then the real savings is in the 800 and down.
Okay. So we'll get on the agenda for the 20th, Patty?
Yep.
And I'd also, Steve, I'm going to ask you to coordinate a meeting with Dan, because certainly there's a few other sort of items around state of the town. So I'll follow up with you. We should give him a heads up. Not that he hasn't seen this, but just some of the details, some of the thinking. So
well, I think
have that before the 20th.
The senior program expansions that COA is bringing with us, and then the veterans ones we talked about last week with Mr. Quill, but also CPA.
Yep. It's several different things. So
CPA we voted on an exemption, and we just need to implement.
So Paris, how would you like that labeled as the residential tax exemption?
Yes. Okay. So, and then this is, again, more of a readout of workstream 2. There's no decision tonight, but again, the state of the town table tends to be, it doesn't tend to be off camera. It is off camera, so a much smaller population see it. So what we did, and Bill, you should jump in here, is we had a group of folks, Bill was one of them with Enzo Rescinato from CPC, and then a variety of other people from capital planning, one of whom is here in the audience, the school committee representative at CPC, the CPC chair, work on different ideas for how we could sort of skin the cat around capital. I won't use Mr. McPeak's analogy on camera. Michelle remembers it well. No, I won't. But different ways we could look at the capital question. And so I'll just take us to the beginning, and then you should talk about the projects, if that makes sense.
Sure, whatever's easier.
So the objective of this group's work was to make a recommendation, for State of the Town to make a recommendation to the Select Board about a 5-year funding plan. We obviously want to maintain our assets. They did. The State of the Town group broadly felt that it was not advisable to be building a lot of new assets, or really any new assets. That the scope should really be on critical maintenance and repair, just given that we're trying to prove real stewardship of our dollars. They have about $7.5 million, a little more than that, coming into the capital and building stabilization funds. $2 million of debt, net of about 5.6. In addition, there's CPA. But CPA has a much broader set of uses than just capital. So you can assign what percentage of the 1.8 could help with capital projects, but it's presumably not more than half, and most people would probably say it's a number well short of that. And then there's this idea of creating a downtown BID. Interesting idea, I think, which is a special surcharge the downtown businesses would put on themselves to fund some of the downtown work. It's pretty small, so I think we've sort of put a pin on that. It's a cool idea, but it's kind of a bit of a rounding error in the scheme of what we're talking about here.
And it's been tried and failed.
Yes.
In town.
It's been proposed and failed.
Multiple
It doesn't
times.
even get past proposal. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. People do not. People have not historically wanted to do it. The other thing, and it's voluntary, so they would just be able to say no. And the other thing is the Chamber of Commerce chairwoman has told probably all of us, but certainly has told me that fatigue around construction in the center is high.
Fair.
So I think we looked at it. I think it's good that we sized it. I think it's appropriately going to have a pin put in it. Okay. So we have total requests this is bona fide requests. This is not sort of the FinCom perspective, which is more mathematical of depreciating our assets, over their useful life and getting a number that's like 22 million. This is actual bona fide requests that CPC has gotten are about 86. The stabilization funds over the next 5 years produce about 32. So we have an unfunded amount. And then the question that the State of the Town group has been wrestling with is how do we try to help with some of that 53.9 million. Ideally, you'd fund all of it, but obviously that can be very challenging. And again, that's over a 5-year period of time, and that's total. That's not per annum. That's total. So about 10 million a year. And so these are the 8 packages that the group came up with. One is you can see them all here. Town hall, base work, add in more of a full restoration of town hall, some schools. and then adding in some other critical buildings. It's very building stabilization fund heavy. And then from there, do you add some major playgrounds and then some ADA. So Bill, if you want to, I don't know if you want to take the keyboard and click through, but people can get a sense of which different projects would fit in each one. And I think one important methodological thing here is, before we get into the different projects, is that the idea here, and you see the right-hand column of override amount, is that a project like Town Hall, HVAC, carpets, and windows might be, or not carpets, windows and HVAC, might be $13.4 million. But the idea is not that we're going to do that out of cash. It's that we would put, in that instance, $900,000 into the building stabilization fund, and then we would bond against that. And so this uses a 15x multiple from the estimated cost to the override amount, or divides by 15, I guess, because that is what the rough, for every dollar you have, you can sort of recurring revenue, you can roughly bond out about $15 if it's a 25-year bond. If it's 30, you can get a little bit more, but 1 to 15 for a 25-year bond is the rough ratio that the comptroller gave us to work with. Yeah. So again, numbers are more directional than fully accurate, but you can get a sense of 8 different ways you can go from funding, the bare minimum of keeping this building moving, all the way up to really the full 5-year plan with this override.
Yeah, in 2 points before getting into the projects themselves there. One, by taking this approach, we're increasing the levy. So, the idea here is to address the current 5-year capital plan as best as we can, free up the stabilization plan so they can be used better, more strategically, to get ahead of maintenance and everything else. But then when these bonds come off 20, 30 years down the road, now we have the extra bandwidth that we've already created to solve our problems in the future too. So it's not just fixing the problems that we currently have, it's giving ourselves more bandwidth to fix them down the line as well. And by bonding it right away, like really getting out and having these projects ready to go, and I don't think you're going to be surprised by any of these projects when you see them, we also lock in the money so that these projects are happening. It's not going to become like a free-for-all grab over the next couple years for whatever comes up. The idea here is that we're committed to some list of projects to make these start happening right away. So again, I think we've all seen these projects year after year after year. And one reason that they've been selected is because they are of a cost and maybe of an interest level that's just really hard to get them up on the capital plan. So Town Hall. Town Hall, the idea 10 years ago was $2, $3, $4 million in repairs, but now we're up to the $13 to $19 million range, where we have to address the HVAC issues, the windows, the carpetings, the bathrooms. At that point, we're triggering ADA compliance because we're doing enough work that's it's equal to 25 or 33% of the value of the building. So more has to be done. We've heard these town hall repairs being necessary for year after year. We certainly want to support our staff. This is a way of getting it done and moving forward. The schools, again, lots of things that we see year after year. Ambrose with HVAC, roof repair to Ambrose, to Lincoln, to McCall. These are all repairs that, again, are costly, that the sooner we address them, the sooner we can avoid other maintenance issues from happening. But they come with, again, a price tag that makes it hard to address them as is with our stabilization funds and everything else. So coming up with a package that lets us get ahead of all of this gets it actually done.
Didn't we authorize a borrowing for one of those roofs?
We've done patchwork roof repair every year, it seems.
Oh, we did.
That's the patch.
Yeah.
That's the patch. So what's the Ambrose?
So if you go to page 20, you'll see. Sorry, 60. Go big further. So those are your school projects.
But Ambrose isn't on this.
Go one page further.
Ambrose.
It's the Ambrose roof patch is the one. It's like right over the lobby, basically. And then this is the actual replacement of the roof.
So we can come back to it. But,
Yeah, maybe.
But yeah,
That was part of the
question too.
Yeah, part of question 2 with Lynch. Okay, but go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I mean, we can get into all these details, and I think we have to before we come to a final decision. This is just kind of mapping out the large menu that the Capitol representatives, the school representatives, and the rest of us were all looking at. The biggest buckets are with the schools and town hall. After that, we get into smaller projects that are repeat offenders on the capital list that we've been talking about for years again, like the library windows and safety equipment with the fire and police departments, various parks and playgrounds initiatives. We would have to decide where our appetite is, going back to something like this in terms of how much we want to dedicate an override to addressing these capital issues. And of course, the more we do, the more we free up the stabilization funds, and the more we can have better flexibility and proactive maintenance as we move forward. But there's certainly a range, and somewhere between A and H, I'm hoping we can find a place that we're all happy to fall.
I think sorry, Mike, just real quick. I think the other thing is these groupings are just a group of people's opinion.
Yeah.
So I think the key is that there's an idea that it's a good idea to do groupings. What the groupings are, though, I think is very much like subject to. Well, I think though that there's a belief that if town manager and the select board working with CPC create a package, and we can agree on that, whether it's any of these or some combination of them, that would be better than just putting, $2 million in a stabilization fund.
Yeah,
and just sort of letting it, just letting it be.
The success of this is having a plan, and I think some of these projects fall together just naturally, like the ones that all concern town hall. But there is wiggle room, and that's certainly something that we as a select board can debate, because maybe there's some things that we want to pull up and some things that we want to deprioritize. But I think this gives you an idea of how much we could get done with a relatively moderate, what's the word I want to use?
Infusion.
Infusion, thank you.
And so these are these projects that otherwise wouldn't be able to be funded through the existing stabilization funds? Is that why they're?
Essentially, I mean, the town hall project is too big to do otherwise.
Yeah, no,
It just wipes out the capital stabilization fund, and nothing else would get done if we could even get that done.
Go back to page 4. I think it's a good question. So there's 32 of available resources, right? And then there's a bunch of that's programmatic, like roads and sidewalks and stuff, right?
Yep.
And so then the question is, how much of this could you throw against town hall, the critical school system stuff? And then from there, the projects are smaller, like library, public safety, parks. And the answer is some, but you could probably do one of them. But we should get a view from capital planning on how much you can do.
So, and I think, and this is useful, so again, we've seen this at State of the Town as well. So to that point that Mike has, which is, is there a $2 million project you could do with stabilization fund over 2 fiscal years? There might be, right? Mm-hmm. It'd take $2 million, do $1 million this year and $1 million the next year. And the other thing is, I just did a quick back of the envelope on CPA, Article 28. So of the $1,036,000, 15.7% went to historic buildings, and you can spend a third, 33% could go. So in the town hall is historic, Lincoln is historic. Some of those projects, I understand this is a snapshot. It's a need. Here it is. But I wonder if before the select board picks a number, the town manager and we didn't insist, but there was no CPA application for town hall, anything, town hall roof, town hall windows, town hall anything.
Yeah, there's 100,000 of CPA in this round total funded. Sorry, that was a very confusing sentence. Against the capital planning list, $50,000 of backstops and $50,000.
Right, and I'm counting 50,000 toward historic for Lincoln, which is part of that. And the other 112,000 was for Sanborn House, which is a town asset, but not this town asset.
But to be clear, the 112, Sanborn has never put in a CPC request.
Yep.
So Sanborn has nothing in that 85.6.
Agreed. Yeah. So all I'm saying is, you can spend up to a third. A third has to go toward historic properties. and we picked 2 projects with a, yeah. So I just think a thoughtful approach as we pick, if we go after town hall as a board, and go after town hall improvements as a debt exclusion or an operating override, we need to think about where could the CPA help pay some of that debt, potentially, right?
You go up a page, Bill. Sorry, not down. So the one key question is, so you have this 3 point, you have.
This is the most historic of our historic buildings.
This
is the one we're sitting in.
Absolutely. So you have 5.6 net from the stabilization funds after debt. And then we have 1.8 of CPA. One key question is, what share should CPA be targeting? And it's really a town meeting decision of helping with some of the capital backlog, right? Because I think they are, I'm not sure they have a view. I'm not sure they agree with each other, the WCCP. But obviously, if 500,000 of that was being used on capital, that's very different than if it was 100,000.
Yeah.
Like per year.
And given that a third has to go, 30%, not a third, 30% to housing, 30% to historic, 30% to open space, I think. And we need a strategy.
It's 10.
I'm sorry, you're right. It's 10 up to a 30.
No, it's 10%.
It could be 10. It's 10 periods, that's right.
And then the rest is
But
allocated.
so we did just over that, of 10%.
The 10's the minimum.
Yeah. That's right.
And then the balance of the 70% can be used
on anything.
For anything.
On anything, so, you know.
So no, I agree. It's the first go around for CPA, and we haven't, the select board didn't take a firm position, town manager didn't take a firm position on this building getting some love, but there's another cycle in the spring. And
But this was a short cycle that was,
Absolutely.
you know, the pilot year for the CPA. So, you know, I'm just concerned that we did talk a lot about these buildings with the CPA, and, you know, that part of that was the preservation of them. So if we come up strategically with a balance of it, I think that's helpful.
But I think it would be useful if the view is going to be that a chunk of CPA is going to help with some of these projects, that we sort of communicate that formally, right? That we say our expectation as a board, and it's not our decision, it's town meeting's decision, but we'll sort of tell them that that's our view, is that, I'm just going to make up a number, 450,000, a quarter of it, is being used for the building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a helpful strategic plan.
Yep.
Yeah, and then we all just have to, I mean, we don't control the CPA, so we just would have to be pushing them hard to get on board with our plan.
I think the key is if they get that sense that that's what town meeting wants. Because town meeting ultimately has to approve all the money.
That's right.
So.
Okay. That was my only thought on that mix, is there's definitely something you could pick off. And not even going to playgrounds and open space, just focused on buildings. That's all. Mm-hmm. This is all good, though. I mean, it's well condensed, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think CPA can be used to get rid of some of this stuff, but there's still so much more.
Oh, totally.
We have to be.
It's literally a fraction, but it'd be nice to leverage a fraction toward a shared purpose. Cool. It's a fraction of the cost, but it'd be nice to have a shared purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, I mean, $500,000, for example, every year, that's serious money.
Yeah, right.
Serious borrowing money, too.
Serious borrowing money, or even just pay-go money. I mean, you could wipe out some big projects. But.
Okay.
Okay.
So we'll take this up, capital, as later after town meeting?
Yeah.
What do you think?
And so I know it's not up there, but if you look at the eye chart on, which is the first page, it's in the packet here. So today's October 6th, which is the yellow row across. So we were supposed to review options for capital, and we give the solar update and residential exemption.
Yep.
So capital would come back on October 20th if we're ready to start discussing, override options then, or we could just kick it to the late note, because we've already talked about kind of the numbers. So it's really, you have to pair it with the operating number, right?
Correct.
I mean, otherwise it's kind of a context-free conversation. We'd all love to do all the capital, but we don't have enough operating. So
I think we can get it on an agenda, maybe the 27th, maybe one of the nights of town meeting, to even just get the feel for the board on operating debt exclusion, what size, which projects, right? We talked about this at the table. If I'm just doing project C, which is like some roofs and some townhomes, we could start to get, I think, a feel of the board on where might this money go. or which things might we get behind, but we have to think about the overall dollar or the strategy to get there in parallel with operating. I agree.
I think an important thing for this board to discuss is the CPA point, though, because that is the other major source of money, right? The BID is tiny. I mean, there's 1.9 million and growing of CPA dollars a year, and it was marketed that it would help with capital, right?
Yes, and there'll be a state match coming in on top of that 1.9.
That's including it.
Is it?
Yeah, it's
1.6 plus 3.
But in any case, we told voters so in people's minds, I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but if we don't know today, it'd be really helpful to understand that, because if we start to communicate to the world that we have sized the override, just for sake of argument, these are the critical projects we need to get done. We would need an override of X, but we're going to assume 500 comes out of CPA, so we're going to put on the ballot X minus 500. Like, that would be really useful to know, right? And for us to say that. And I'm not saying it could be 300, it could be 900, but I think it'd be very helpful to get a sense from this board on what number people think. On average, it can go up and down, of course.
We did have at one point a list of capital projects as they aligned to CPA eligibility, and it might be helpful to bring that back too.
I will tell you that, I mean, but like all of the Lincoln and Town Hall was on that. I've read the study report, and the problem is that you and Mike shared. The problem with that is that could take all of the CPA,
right?
like every dollar of it, which I don't think anybody's going to sign up for that, right?
Well, that wasn't the intention with the study report. It was always this is here to grease the wheels and to combine.
I think you were saying
resources.
Agreed. I'm just saying. So how do we get to even if people just give a guesstimate of saying we want quarter, a half, eighth, a third?
Yeah, but I think that
a number between 0 and 30. What?
Yeah, that conceptualization of what projects from capital are eligible helps to understand then. Like when we talk about pulling something off, what does it mean to say $500,000? And if you look at the list of capital projects, where does that alleviate the capital demand?
So and I think the other thing we can do is we can decide we can get a feel as a board, see if we're going in a certain direction, and we'll see how town meeting goes with these projects.
Bill, can you go
What's the appetite for town meeting? Is anyone making noise about, hey, what about these other capital? Like, I don't know. It would be interesting to see how that debate goes.
So, agreed. Can you go to the 8 projects? The eight
A, B, C, C, D.
So, like, what would be? I agreed with that, and I do. For example, I know there's some commentary from a precinct chair meeting that I wasn't at, that the FinCom and CPC chairs were at. That there was kind of there's less capital on here than we would have thought. Now that's 8 people's opinion, but it's useful to see where the whole town meeting shakes out. The way I would think about this, let's just assume for the sake of argument that we liked the packages exactly as they were, which I appreciate we may not.
Sure.
So let's just assume for, again, the sake of argument, we wanted to do D. That's in our ideal sense what we would fund. But then we said, oh, well, we'll actually just put $2 million on the override because we're expecting $450 to come from CPA. Like that would be what, like we basically pick a package and then we say, but because of CPA can take out a chunk of that package, we can go further up on in terms of the actual money we need. Because that, I think, Anthea, gets to the point you're raising, which is like you're doing which projects total, and then a chunk of those are CPA, and then what's left for the new stabilization fund money.
Yeah, I think the other piece, right, if you look at it, I mean, these CPA projects, many of them are capital. It's not just the overlap of Lincoln as a capital project, but repairing the Leonard basketball court is a capital project. It's just that capital request is small and nowhere near the sort of prioritization of HVAC and leaks and stuff in this building. So there's also the alleviation from CPA of the capital.
Yeah, I was just fixated on buildings, but you're absolutely right.
I may have missed. So we should make sure that we understand which CPC projects our CCP is actually funding. I thought it was just the 2. It was just backstops and Lincoln Chiller, but you're saying there's another one on there, Leonard. Well, I didn't know that.
I mean, it's. I guess I think those are requests that REC would have made to capital would have put in their capital requests if they weren't going to WCCP to make those requests.
Yep.
Yeah, that's fair.
So kind of.
Prioritized anyway.
Right.
Might not have
Yep.
been cut, right? It would be unlikely to make the cut, probably.
Okay, so I want to maybe just move on to a couple
Yeah, I think we're
next
good.
topics, but we'll bring it back, I think. So we're going to do assessor coming in on the 20th. We'll talk about residential exemption, at least give the heads up. And we'll talk about, I think, capital projects, if we can get it on the 27th, if not one of the nights of town meeting. I think we'll talk about kind of this mix of things. Okay,
Thank you. That was very helpful.
this is great. Thank you. Mike, is there any Forest Ridge update? I know there's nothing in the packet, but just wanted to.
I don't think so as of yet. I think I had mentioned before we're working on some maybe grant opportunities that exist at the state level that will have a bit of a longer runway. Some of them would help with the acquisition piece. Some of them would help with some of the soft costs. So we're looking at both, working with the Conservation Commission. So I'll keep you updated there.
Okay, so our next meeting on the 20th. Okay, so we have consent agenda, then we have executive session.
Motion to approve the consent agenda as posted for Monday, October 6, 2025.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right. So WinCam, at this point, we're going to go into executive session.